The system was merely a form adapted by the human race to assist in cultivation. Clearly, the E-Trib did not use systems to strengthen themselves through cultivation, as they had no specific system tasks, and Xiang Beifei could not specifically engage with it. However, the essence of the system was the Tao embryo, and since he could control the system, there must be a way to control other people's Tao embryos as well, something Xiang Beifei was certain of. Now, his understanding of the Tao was far greater than before. Take this Panjiao youth as an example. His most formidable aspect was naturally the horn shining with golden light in the black and white world, which meant the Panjiao youth communicated with the heavenly Tao through his horn and had initially connected with the heavenly Tao laws, though the connection wasn't fully established yet. With Xiang Beifei's current ability, to sever this horn's connection with the heavenly Tao would only require a burning yang or burning yin since the opponent was far weaker than him, but that was not what he wanted. He needed to ascertain his control over the heavenly Tao. By now, the battle between the Panjiao youth and the Dao man had escalated to an intense stage, neither knowing why they fought but both ferociously unrelenting in their blows, each aiming to kill the other. Every time the Panjiao youth used his great horn, the golden light trembled slightly, those lights like spider webs trying to grasp the laws of the universe, channeling them onto himself. The Panjiao youth grew increasingly valiant in battle, showing no mercy whatsoever. The horn on the back of his head was extremely flexible, almost treating it like a third hand, seamlessly changing shapes to block Dao and even transforming into a sharp blade for striking. The Dao man was not to be outdone, showing no fear whatsoever. The two fought fiercely, their tumultuous aura shredding the surrounding trees, facing the Panjiao youth's defense. However, at that moment, a third shadow suddenly flashed through the air, moving incredibly fast like lightning, sweeping past the Dao man accompanied by a scream as the Dao man's left claw fell. Presumptuous! The newcomer was another Panjiao man wrapped in a red tiger skin with a black mole between his eyebrows. This man had a powerful aura, clearly indicating the strength of someone at the heavenly connection realm. Xiang Beifei focused his eyes and realized how the E-Trib's Tao embryo looked. This heavenly connection realm Panjiao had already communicated with the heavenly Tao laws. In the black and white world, a phantom figure appeared behind him resembling a man with a ram's head, its horns majestic and noble, resembling the deity of heaven and earth, its eyes even radiating a holy gleam. Could this ram-headed figure be what he communicated with through the heavenly Tao laws? Xiang Beifei eyed the divine laws manifesting on the heavenly connection expert, closely analyzing and finding it indeed matched what he knew of Tao embryos. But the conflict elsewhere had evidently reached its end. After the Dao man's arm was chopped off, his aura significantly weakened, and he plummeted toward the ground. However, the Panjiao clan's heavenly connection realm expert showed no mercy, clenching his hand, tightening the air around the Dao man, giving him no chance to escape. Ah! The Dao man's face showed terror as his figure froze mid-air, as if time itself had stopped. Bang! The Dao man's body instantly exploded into a mist of blood. This late orifice-transforming master had just died. For a heavenly connection realm expert to kill someone in the orifice-transforming phase was incredibly easy. To bully the weak, that's just unreasonable, Li Qianluo muttered. This had been a duel between experts in the later stages of orifice transforming, evenly matched until a heavenly connection realm fighter emerged and killed the orifice transforming practitioner, which was rather disgraceful. But Li Qianluo quickly turned and instructed, "However, it's their business to bully the weak. I need to make it clear to you, in such places, we shouldn't meddle unnecessarily. You think I would run out and stop that heavenly connection expert?" Xiang Beifei asked curiously. People from the Kangji Abyss always like to stand up against injustice, and since you sneaked out of your home without experience, I worry you might interfere impulsively, so I had to remind you in advance, Li Qianluo said seriously. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but give a wry smile. He didn't know the Sodding race or the feud between the Panjiao and Sodding races. It had nothing to do with him. However, he took another look at Li Qianluo, having thought she was of a restless nature who, seeing injustice, would impulsively interfere. Yet, it turned out she was quite sensible. That made things easier. But just then, A very powerful aura appeared ahead in the sky, accompanied by an angry voice thundering forward. Zhao Yingguang, you dare kill my man? Swish! A terrifyingly large pincer materialized in the spatial void, even more formidable than before, pressing down on the Panjiao clan's heavenly connection expert. As the pincer snapped shut, it seemed to crush the very heavens and earth, the air exploding and boiling. Yet, Zhao Yingguang, the addressed Panjiao clan expert, sneered, waving his hand as rings of powerful light erupted around him, forming black-horned barriers that blocked the overwhelming pincer strike. Sapu, he first killed my men last time, so he must pay the price, Zhao Yingguang coldly shouted, not fearing the Sapu race's expert. In the air appeared a dark-skinned, bald middle-aged man whose appearance was not much different from that of human beings, or to say, was already a complete human form, just like Zhao Yingguang. Those of the E-tribe who had reached the heavenly connection realm, after communicating with the heavenly Tao laws, seemed to have shed the characteristics of desolate beasts, with neither horns nor large pincers. How dare you? Last time it was your clan members who came to our territory to provoke trouble, seeking their own death, Sapu angrily said. That territory originally belonged to our Panjiao race. You killed my men, so you must pay with your life, Zhao Yingguang coldly shouted. The conflict between these two races seemed quite complex. Listening to their conversation, it appeared to be a territorial dispute, thus seizing the opportunity to strike, seeking to vent their anger. As a heavenly connection realm expert, Zhao Yingguang had killed the Sapu race's orifice-transforming expert. How could Sapu let it go so easily? With a low shout, Sapu flipped over his hand, and behind him appeared a dignified and divine spirit's phantom. This phantom seemed to be the heavenly Tao laws their Sapu race communicated with, looking like a majestic scorpion desolate beast. This scorpion was all blue, crystal clear as if it was sculpted from a fine craft, emanating a strong blue holy light. Clearly, this blue scorpion was the heavenly Tao laws that Sapu had communicated with, consistent with the dignified goathead phantom behind Zhao Yingguang. Both were some kind of powerful Tao embryo. Boom! The two heavenly connection realm experts immediately made their move. The light from the blue scorpion seemed to twist space, its large pincers striking out. Wherever it went, space collapsed, and the blue light soared into the sky, lighting up the heavens. On the other side, Zhao Yingguang's goat-headed human-bodied principle thundered loudly, with horns interweaving in the air, forming a series of powerful defenses. The golden light flourished, meeting the large pincers head-on. Bang! 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 The confrontation between the heavenly connection realm experts erupted with terrifying fluctuations, much more severe than the earlier fight between the two orifice-transforming experts. The nearest mountain was directly blasted to pieces, and not only that, the waves of force even came towards where Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo were. Really now? Li Qianluo frowned. Her hand lit up with a white light, covering the mountain and blocking the shockwave, protecting the mountain from being shattered by the tumult over there. In fact, not just her. Many mountains in the distance remained unharmed, staunchly resisting the destructive force of Zhao Yingguang and Sapu's clash. Some mountains, faced with a shockwave strong enough to upend seas and overturn mountains, stood immovable as a mountain, their leaves not so much as quivering. Clearly, the battle here had attracted many E-tribe experts, and like Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei, they all watched on with a bystander's interest, hiding in the shadows. They did not intervene, each implicitly protecting their location, which was a kind of declaration of territory. It seems there are quite a few experts, Xiang Beifei said. You've perceived it too, right? I can sense 27 heavenly connection realm auras, 321 orifice transforming ones, and a scattering of other lesser troops, Li Qianluo said. Didn't expect it to gather so many here. Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. It was his first time encountering so many heavenly connection realm experts gathered together. Indeed, it was his first time seeing so many strange and curious members of the E-tribe. But this was also an opportunity. The more heavenly connection realm experts there were, the clearer he could understand what these E-people relied on to communicate with the heavenly Tao. Of course, all these experts came for the ancient inheritance of the Edge Corner airspace. It is said that such inheritance can allow one to reach the immortal realm faster, and it includes various powerful treasures that can enhance the strength of one's race. Enough to drive everyone mad, Li Qianluo explained and added. The inheritance hasn't made a move yet. The smart experts are conserving their strength and won't start fighting like the Sodding race and Panjiao race. Starting to fight now means waiting to be beaten later. Xiang Beifei naturally understood this principle. Everyone came for the inheritance left by the deities of the Edge Corner airspace. There was only one inheritance, but so many experts wanted a share of it. It went without saying that conflicts would arise later. Thus, most of the E-people were watching and waiting, saving their energy for later, and not getting involved. Come to think of it, they all seem to be grouping together, each race leading quite a number of its members here. Xiang Beifei observed the other mountains that hadn't been destroyed. Although he couldn't make out specific figures, the aura covering each mountain was essentially the same. Inheritance isn't something you can get just by having a lot of people. Relax, we're not weak either. Didn't we agree to look out for each other? Li Qianluo said cheerfully as she patted Xiang Beifei on the shoulder, treating him like one of her own after their conversation. All right then. Xiang Beifei didn't argue, but there was one thing that made him quite puzzled. He turned his head again, contemplating as he looked at Li Qianluo. In his eyes, Li Qianluo was also perceived as one of the people maintaining the balance between black and white. This girl was definitely at the heavenly connection level, there was no mistake about that, yet for some reason she was different from Zhao Yingguang and the Sapu. When Xiang Beifei used his black and white spiritual power to observe them, both Zhao Yingguang and the Sapu had special divine projections around them. One had the figure of a goat-headed humanoid, and the other a blue scorpion, which could be explained as the heavenly Tao laws they communicated with. Logically, Li Qianluo should have had the same. But the reality was the opposite. Xiang Beifei didn't see any heavenly Tao laws being communicated with Li Qianluo. Her whole body's black and white aura was maintained in a very balanced state. If he hadn't already witnessed Li Qianluo's abilities, he probably wouldn't have thought she was a master of the heavenly connection realm. Xiang Beifei was quite curious about Li Qianluo. However, the focus wasn't on Li Qianluo at the moment. The battle between Zhao Yingguang and the Sapu on the other side had drawn most of his attention. These two powerhouses were so strong that their moves changed the weather and shook the earth. But just then, a clear, melodious sound suddenly came from afar, sweet and pleasant, like the song of an oriole. But soon the pitch began to deepen, becoming like the sigh of a deity, stirring everyone's soul. As the sound rang out, all the masters of the heavenly connection realm were startled, all unanimously turning their gaze northward. Even Zhao Yingguang and the Sapu, who had been ferociously fighting moments ago, paused and looked in the direction of the sound. In the direction of the northern sound, that place was suddenly enveloped in a vast expanse of radiance, dazzling and breathtaking. Even the clouds in the sky were saturated. At this moment, golden chains appeared in the sky, intertwining and forming what looked like seals, spanning every corner of the sky. Each chain was enormous, with just a single link measuring 10 meters in length, and these massive chains were suffused with vast and powerful auras, as if a mighty deity had locked this piece of void. How powerful! Xiang Beifei was quite surprised to see such a phenomenon appearing in the sky. The terrifying pressure emanating from those chains made even him feel apprehensive, surpassing even the powerful aura that had erupted during Taoist Qingyang's battle with the two demon kings. What on earth was this? But then, suddenly, purple lightning appeared in the sky, roaring around the chains that imprisoned it and striking the iron links, causing them to clang and spark with purple fire. Crack! At one moment, the thick chains were suddenly broken by the purple lightning. Crack! 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 The chains locking the sky began to collapse, a vast ancient aura spreading out, and suddenly the entire area was imbued with an odd atmosphere, indescribable, but everyone felt the blood in their bodies bubbling ever so slightly, as if they had heard the calling of a deity. The land of inheritance has begun to unseal, stated Li Qianluo. The huge chains in the sky kept shattering. The restraint was broken. As if a forbidden door had opened, and the ancient and timeless spiritual energy surged like a tide, covering the land. Both plants and desolate beasts seemed nourished, unable to resist absorbing this spiritual energy. What a peculiar power! Xiang Beifei couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. When this rich spiritual energy sealed him, he had no choice but to operate the chaos yin-yang formula within him, converting this spiritual energy into spiritual power in his body. Indeed, this spiritual energy provided significant aid for cultivation, allowing for at least a doubling of the effectiveness here. Whoosh! 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 Countless shadows soared into the sky, transforming into streaks of flowing light and phantasms, swiftly heading towards the bright northern horizon. No longer caring about Zhao Yingguang and Sapu who were in combat. Everyone was merely spectating in secret, and at that moment, no one bothered with those two anymore, clearly prioritizing the land of inheritance. Zhao Yingguang, this isn't over, Sapu shouted deeply. Then with a wave of his hand, he gathered his subordinates and turned to head towards the land of inheritance, faster than a shadow. Compared to a life-and-death struggle with Zhao Yingguang, he cared more about the land of inheritance. Humph, you sure run fast. Zhao Yingguang sneered coldly, but he also didn't delay any further, immediately gesturing, and took his subordinates to rush over, afraid of falling even a step behind. Many elite fighters had rushed towards the north, and soon only Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei were left in the mountain range. Let them go first. We shouldn't be in a hurry, Li Qianluo said while sitting on a rock. Why do I feel like you are here just for a fun trip, uninterested in this thing? Xiang Beifei asked. He wasn't very eager either. Coming here in search of the so-called land of inheritance was not his original intention. He didn't care much about what the inheritance was. It just so happened that his destination coincided with this location. The inheritance in Edge Corner airspace isn't about who gets there first. Did you even think about it? With so many crammed in there, anyone who gets it first would be attacked by the others, Li Qianluo said cheerfully. This made sense. Having powerful inheritance was not just about finding it first. The key was surviving to take it away. So when do you plan to make a move? Xiang Beifei asked. Take it easy. Let's sit down and chat for a bit first. Li Qianluo gestured, then took a small sip of jade flower wine, paired with a few pieces of fried sauce rat meat that had been preserved earlier, clearly enjoying the moment. Xiang Beifei stroked his chin, finding it strange. But at that moment, a powerful burst of energy suddenly emanated from afar. It seemed like latecomer elite fighters had arrived. These fighters came rather late, so they moved very quickly, vanishing in a flash at the horizon, and Xiang Beifei didn't even get a clear look at their appearance. At that moment, Li Qianluo stood up in a rush, saying, "Let's go. We need to get in there now." Xiang Beifei was astonished. Didn't you say we'd chat for a while? What's there to chat about? Can't we talk inside? If we're any later, even the vegetables will go cold, Li Qianluo said as he grabbed Xiang Beifei and soared into the sky. Xiang Beifei was completely bewildered. Did you recognize any of those people who just flew past? Xiang Beifei could tell that Li Qianluo seemed to have been waiting for that group of people to pass by. No idea. Li Qianluo immediately shook his head. Xiang Beifei's gaze flickered slightly, but he didn't inquire further. The two rapidly followed the main group heading north, and what confirmed the direction for Xiang Beifei was the mound spirit's direction as well, which surprisingly he found odd. They didn't fly far, just over a mountain range, but in the plains ahead was a white expanse of fog, like a thick city wall blocking their vision. Is this the land of inheritance? What dangers might be present? Xiang Beifei observed numerous shadows disappearing into the dense fog, completely out of sight. Even with Xiang Beifei's keen vision, he couldn't peer through the dense fog, which significantly hindered his view inside. I don't know. I'm here for the first time just like you, Li Qianluo said, looking out over the plains for a moment. Everyone stopped here earlier because that heavy fog blocked them. If the seal doesn't open, we fundamentally can't enter the large fog. Xiang Beifei had indirectly inquired about the rumors of the land of inheritance from Li Qianluo. It was said that this place was originally the residence of a powerful deity of the Edge Corner airspace. Later, for unknown reasons, the deity left, sealing the area with powerful heaven and earth formation chains that even masters of the immortal realm were invincible to break. However, these heaven and earth chains would break periodically, evidently a flaw of the formation that required recasting every 50 years, allowing a 1-month interval during which it said the deity's legacy was left behind. I don't quite understand. This land of inheritance must have existed for countless years, right? So many races send elites every time. Why hasn't anyone heard of anyone obtaining the legacy? Xiang Beifei asked. They didn't obtain the legacy, but some got the means to go to the Edge Corner airspace, Li Qianluo said mysteriously. Actually, obtaining the legacy isn't the most crucial part. Everyone is primarily looking for amulets that allow travel to the dangerous Edge Corner airspace. Without something to save your life, venturing deeper there means certain doom. Xiang Beifei had no concept of Edge Corner airspace, but he was too embarrassed to ask more since he was supposed to be from the Kangji Abyss, and by rights should have been aware of these things. He could only wait for Li Qianluo to inadvertently reveal more, pretending he was just someone who had snuck out. By now, many people had passed through the vast white mist, and it was unclear where they had gone. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo also arrived at the plain and submerged themselves in the white fog. The visibility was about 10 meters due to the dense fog around them, but even the mist here was refreshing and clear-headed, brimming with spiritual energy that helped everyone enhance their strength. If it weren't for the purpose of competing with others for treasures, cultivating here would have been a fine choice. The vegetation on the ground was also thriving, with lush green grass. Walking a few steps, one could see 1 or 2 trees, and occasionally there were bees and butterflies fluttering about. But apart from insects, there seemed to be no other small desolate beasts. It appeared very tranquil and peaceful. They continued forward and had flown for an hour without seeing anyone else. It seemed everyone else was flying much faster, and now it was unclear where they had gone. Due to the low visibility, they probably dispersed immediately after entering. Xiang Beifei was extremely vigilant along the way. He spread out his spiritual power, hoping to perceive his surroundings through it, but regrettably, his spiritual power was also severely suppressed here. How come there's no one around? Li Qianluo muttered. Be careful. I feel something's off about this place, Xiang Beifei said. The space here was restricted, making instant teleportation impractical. Flying was the only option for travel. However, just at this moment, a fragrance wafted over from somewhere, sweeping over their noses with its delightful scent. They walked another 10 meters or so when suddenly several voices emerged from up ahead, as if some people were conversing. The two of them quietly approached and concealed their presence behind a rock. In front of them were 4 males, looking very similar to humans, at least different from the E-tribe with distinctive features like the Panjiao race and Soding race. Yet, these 4 individuals had weaker cultivations than Xiang Beifei and his companion. 2 were at the orifice transforming phase, and 2 at the god refining phase, currently discussing the cluster of flowers in front of them. These flowers amazed Xiang Beifei and his companion, as just one flower was as big as a small tent. All the flowers were lying on the ground, white in color. The vines were very robust, like winding stone pillars, and the leaves were as large as doors. The flowers stretched across the ground like a sea of flowers, but in the very center of this flower sea was a very large flower support. The round flower support was 4 to 5 meters in diameter, resembling a flower base left behind after the petals had wilted, and it was filled with sparkling and transparent fruit. Each fruit was pointed, diamond-shaped, about the height of an average person, wrapped in rich spiritual energy, looking like spiritual power crystals. And they were at least the spiritual power crystals of the orifice transforming phase. This was extremely pure and valuable stuff. If harvested and assimilated, it would be enough to raise one's cultivation level by a notch. And now, those 4 cultivators in front had set their minds on these fruits. Remember, I and Yuan will draw the flower's attention, and you 2 immediately use the king blade to get the fruits. We 2 will cover you, said one of the orifice transforming phase cultivators. Understood. The 2 god refining phase cultivators replied. Be careful. Everything here is not simple. In fact, it's very dangerous. Stay alert, and if you sense that something is wrong, retreat immediately. Don't resist stubbornly. Life is the most important. Another cultivator instructed. All 4 cultivators were clearly very cautious, aware of the dangers here. After discussing their plan, they immediately started to act. As soon as the 2 at the orifice transforming phase leapt up, vines suddenly sprang out from within the flowers, coiling towards them. One of them swung his hand, releasing a burst of black blades from his palm, slashing at the vines. Clang! Clang! The sound of metal striking metal resounded. The vines were very tough, with the strength of the orifice transforming phase. They fought the cultivator back and forth, but the 2 cultivators were clearly superior, quickly shredding the vines. While dealing with the vines, they protected their companions and gradually approached the flower support, aiming to harvest the fruits. The battle here was more than the 2 cultivators at the God refining stage could intervene in, but the 4 of them were in such perfect sync that they didn't need the 2 God refining practitioners to handle the danger. As they approached the flower receptacle, the 2 God refining cultivators quickly leaped onto it and grasped for the fruits. However, as soon as they touched the fruit, a strange light emanated from within. The abundant energy within the spiritual power crystals seemed to melt away, turning into a mist and swiftly attaching itself to the hands of the 2 God refining practitioners, before spreading over their bodies. Ah! Help! One of the God refining cultivators had just cried out in terror when his screams abruptly stopped because his entire body was enveloped, and that white mist settled upon him, solidifying once more. Something's not right. Retreat quickly. The 2 orifice transforming cultivators from the E-tribe also changed complexion drastically. But by then it was too late. The other God refining cultivator suffered the same fate. Entwined by the white mist, he stood frozen on the flower receptacle. In just a moment, both practitioners had turned into a pair of crystal-clear, white crystal fruits. Now everyone finally understood what those spiritual power crystals on the flower receptacle were all about. They were not the transformation of fruits into spiritual power crystals. Rather, they were the result of invaders being caught and wrapped into such substances. The 2 orifice transforming E-tribesmen looked at each other in terror and started to run. But they didn't get very far before the flowers crawling on the ground all suddenly sprang to life, pouncing on them. At that moment, the aura of the flower sea suddenly intensified, as if it surged violently. When the 2 E-tribesmen's blades struck the flower whiskers, the whiskers emitted a tinkling sound. This time, they were not shattered by the blades but instead directly broke the blades. How did they get stronger? The E-tribesman exclaimed in shock, but as soon as he finished speaking, one of the huge flowers lunged at him, biting down, and with a gurgle, the petals closed swiftly, tightening around him. Within moments, the flower turned into a bud ready to bloom. Damn! The other E-tribesman's complexion changed drastically, but he had no intention of trying to save the other, still attempting to fly out. However, just as he was about to escape the edge of the flower sea, a flower pounced and bit him, and in an instant he too perished. The entire flower sea returned to its tranquil state, the breeze sifting through the large swaying blossoms. All seemed serene, except for 2 diamond-shaped spiritual power crystal fruits that now adorned the centerpiece of the flower receptacle. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo looked at each other. This flower is no simple thing. It knows how to disguise itself, and it's learned to hunt, Li Qianluo whispered. Xiang Beifei had also realized that the seemingly benign flower sea, in reality, did not just exhibit the aura of the orifice transforming stage. It was the strength of the heavenly connection realm. But these sinister flowers had a limited range of motion, so they couldn't ensnare their prey. Hence, they disguised the flower receptacles filled with spiritual power crystals. Once the prey was lured in by these crystals and ventured inside, they fell into the flower's killing range. So the initial shattering of those flower whiskers was all an act, a ploy to feign weakness to the 4 E-tribesmen. And when they believed they were strong enough to breach them, the flowers revealed their true nature, catching them completely off guard. The entire hunting scene unfolded with rapid precision, concluding in under a minute. The flowers here are indeed clever, Xiang Beifei couldn't help saying. Indeed, we must not underestimate anything in this place. Li Qianluo frowned, a rare seriousness overtaking him. They had only been here less than an hour, and already E-tribe cultivators had lost their lives. It was clear that this was no ordinary place. Xiang Beifei surveyed the ground covered with ghost king flowers. Each ghost king flower looked pure and innocent. Although they were large, they seemed harmless to humans and animals. The tender petals appeared delicate, with tiny blue bees gathering nectar from them. If one hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would believe that these could actually be the formidable man-eating flowers. Li Qianluo carefully walked to a leaf as large as a bedsheet and lifted it, revealing a bloody, severed hand beneath. This hand belonged to the E-tribe member who had just been enveloped by the giant flower. His arm had still been sticking out of the petals when the soft petals cleanly sliced it off at the elbow. It's from the six-toed race. Li Qianluo examined the severed hand. During the scuffle with the 4 E-tribe members, they all had their arms extended, brandishing a black blade on their forearms. Judging by this severed hand, which closely resembled a human's, there was a strange horn growing in its palm, looking like a 6th finger, which was the black blade they used in combat. Xiang Beifei didn't know what the six-toed race was. Li Qianluo thought Xiang Beifei knew and didn't explain further. Soon, some earthworm-like roots crawled over the ground, wrapping around the severed hand and dragging it underground. "Ao Wu," Era called out softly. "Can't you control the plants here?" "Ao Wu, Ao Wu." Era indicated that the plants here seemed to possess some very strange ability that severed his connection to them. That was quite odd. Li Qianluo took a few steps around the edge of the flower sea and said, "That spiritual power crystal is a decoy by these flowers. Its real beast pill should be on the withered flower bud 27 meters to the left." Xiang Beifei had already noticed it. This flower was adept at camouflage. All the flowers were growing vigorously, except a few withered buds that appeared malnourished, which most people would overlook. Li Qianluo took another careful look at the giant flower, then said, "This flower is not a real living being. It must be something powerful in disguise. I'll go and take care of it." Without waiting for Xiang Beifei to speak, she darted out, transforming into a streak of light, rushing to the flower bud. At that moment, the other giant flowers also sensed danger and moved to defend themselves as Li Qianluo charged. All the flowers rapidly opened and closed, lunging toward Li Qianluo, and countless tendrils also lashed out at her. They no longer attempted to disguise or lure the enemy because the threat from Li Qianluo was too great. The entire flower sea came to life. The previously frail flowers filled with a murderous intent, with many petals rapidly spinning, resembling darts in flight, zipping through the air, slicing through the void, and swooping at Li Qianluo. Confronting the murderous petals and flying leaves, Li Qianluo seemed entirely unconcerned, even relaxed. Her figure was light as she danced among the flowers like a sprite, effortlessly sweeping her hand, powerful spiritual energy coalescing around her. A strange aura seemed to swell around her, and when the killer petals and leaves touched the whirlwind by her body, all their ferocity dissipated, becoming as soft as butter, and they fluttered up like ordinary petals caught in the wind, sent spinning through the air by her manipulation. More and more petals converged on her, but each one was repurposed by her touch, as she moved unobstructed, like a sprite who controlled the petals and reached the withered bud, then leaned over to pluck. Hum! All the spinning petals and flying leaves of the flower sea suddenly froze midair, then gradually began to crumble and fall, turning to ash. What was once a vast sea of flowers vanished in an instant. "It's taken care of." Li Qianluo was very pleased with her performance. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but be astonished. This girl was truly impressive. She took down the flower sea effortlessly and seemed to barely exert herself. She indeed had skill. Li Qianluo eyed the object in her hand. A milky white crystal shaped like the bud of a flower, only the size of a fist, emitting the rich, energetic fluctuations characteristic of the early stages of the heavenly connection realm. It's not that. Li Qianluo pursed her lips in slight disappointment, then tossed the crystal to Xiang Beifei, saying, "Here, it's yours." "For me." Xiang Beifei caught the crystal. "You don't want it? I'm not interested in this. Consider it payment for that lady rat we roasted earlier," Li Qianluo said generously. "Not interested?" Xiang Beifei didn't quite know what to say. In the outside world, these spiritual power crystals were coveted by all, with people vying fiercely over them. Yet to Li Qianluo, they were like random wildflowers by the roadside, given away as easily as that. "All right then, if you don't want it, I'll accept it. Thank you." Xiang Beifei didn't stand on ceremony. He truly needed it. Now that he had stepped into the heavenly connection realm, he could continue to unlock constellations in the Spirit Gathering book, but unlocking the 15th constellation required an enormous amount of spiritual power crystals. Kuei constellation needed a total of 15 crystals to be unlocked, the largest constellation to date. Back when he was in Juzhou, although he had put Zhuiji, He Kaiwei, and Lady Qiu in their places and acquired quite a few Heavenly Connection Realm spiritual power crystals from them, he had counted only 7 and was still short of 8 early-stage spiritual power crystals to complete his collection. But with this one added, we now only need 7 more. After the flower sea vanished, the two of them continued walking forward. The thick white fog concealed what lay ahead, and Xiang Beifei didn't seem to care much, but he occasionally glanced at Li Qianluo. From the latter's reaction just now, it was obvious that Li Qianluo was searching for something. They climbed over a slope, and suddenly a huge shadow loomed before them. It resembled a straight, tall mountain, but because it was shrouded in the dense fog, its height was indiscernible. Only when they got closer did they realize it was not a mountain at all but a colossal statue. All they could see from their current position were 2 feet, similar in shape to those of a human, but each was dozens of meters long. The feet alone were more than 10 meters high, and the part above the ankles was further up, hidden in the mist, unclear to the sight. Such a large stone carving? Xiang Beifei stopped below the 2 giant feet, equally astonished. Only the 2 gigantic feet of the statue were visible at present, but just the height of the feet was over 10 meters. A rough estimate suggested that the stone statue could be over 1,000 meters tall. Who has the leisure to carve such a gigantic statue? Xiang Beifei couldn't help but say. Li Qianluo also looked at the huge feet of the statue with great curiosity. She wasn't sure either. "Let me see if I can blow away this fog. It's so annoying always blocking the view," she said. Li Qianluo took a deep breath, puffed out her cheeks until they were round, and then blew upwards abruptly. Whoosh! The breath from her mouth turned into a swift tornado, roaring upwards, making a loud hooting sound. The terrifying force in this breath was that of a heavenly connection realm expert, extremely ferocious. It could stir a great storm in the outer wastelands, enough to blow apart a 100-meter-tall mountain. However, the white fog above lazily shifted, and it was blown open by only about 10 meters or so before it stopped, completely unmoved. "Don't bother. The fog here is very strange. It seems to be immune to spiritual power." Xiang Beifei had noticed this issue already. Otherwise he would have dispersed this fog long ago. "That's really weird," muttered Li Qianluo, hands on her hips, looking somewhat frustrated. At that moment, Xiang Beifei suddenly sensed something. He made a small gesture towards Li Qianluo, and at the same time, she became aware of it too, and turned her head. "Who are you two?" A deep voice came from the white fog, and in an instant, it appeared before their eyes. Xiang Beifei slightly frowned. He recognized the voice. It was Zhao Yingguang, the Heavenly Connection Realm expert from the Panjiao race that they had seen in conflict outside. But soon Xiang Beifei realized that it wasn't just Zhao Yingguang who had came. There were 2 other Heavenly Connection Realm experts from the Panjiao race, a total of 3 Heavenly Connection Realm powerhouses, in addition to 7 at the Orifice Transforming stage and 9 at the God Refining stage. For this inheritance of the Edge Corner airspace, the Panjiao race seemed to have sent quite a number of experts. "Is it you?" Li Qianluo was a bit surprised. Zhao Yingguang eyed Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei. They both looked completely human and, For a moment, he couldn't tell which race they belonged to. However, Li Qianluo quickly spoke up. "We are from the Transforming Clan." "The Transforming Clan?" Zhao Yingguang regarded Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei with some skepticism. But Li Qianluo shook her head, and suddenly, a horn grew out of the back of her skull, identical to those of the Panjiao race. "Humph," Zhao Yingguang coldly said. "Put away your filthy horn." For Li Qianluo, mimicking the horns of the Panjiao race seemed to be a great offense to them. "Sorry, I just wanted to clarify my identity," Li Qianluo said with a giggle as she retracted her horns. Zhao Yingguang's gaze swept back and forth between Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei, and the curved horn growing from the back of his head emitted a faint glow, as if he was using it to detect the true cultivation levels of Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei and to see if they had any connection with the heavenly Tao laws. Li Qianluo clung tightly to Xiang Beifei, and her voice abruptly rang out in Xiang Beifei's mind. "Hey, newbie. You're green and don't know much. Just let me handle this. Don't reveal your identity from the Kangji Abyss. Since you guys from the Kangji Abyss have a feud with them, just disguise yourself as someone from the Transforming Clan. I'll keep my form, and I'll transform. My impersonation skills are top-notch." Li Qianluo worried that Xiang Beifei might give them away and specifically reminded him. But actually, there was no need, as Xiang Beifei simply did not care whether the Kangji Abyss and the Panjiao race had enmity. It was irrelevant to him. "Okay, I know," Xiang Beifei responded in his mind. He was, after all, not someone from the Kangji Abyss but a genuine member of the human race. However, Li Qianluo was clearly adept at handling such matters and quickly fabricated a new identity for Xiang Beifei. But then again, the girl Li Qianluo was quite strange. She knew a lot and could even disguise herself as other species. He didn't think too much about it and focused his attention on Zhao Yingguang's golden horn. In his perception, the deity Zhao Yingguang communicated with had the head of a ram and the body of a man, and he used the laws of this deity to scan Xiang Beifei. Just as Zhao Yingguang was using his heavenly Tao laws to search for Xiang Beifei suddenly sensed a very peculiar presence, as if it had somehow connected with the ram-headed deity. "Woof!" Xiaohe exclaimed in surprise. "You noticed it too, didn't you?" Xiang Beifei also found it quite astonishing. Xiaohe and Xiang Beifei exchanged glances, both extremely astounded, because they discovered they could seemingly take control of the ram-headed deity. Of course, it wasn't full control, just a slight interference. This feeling was similar to the time back in Juzhou when they encountered those system awakeners. Ordinary humans in Juzhou, not using the system like Xiang Beifei did when performing tasks, were helpless against Xiang Beifei's system. But as long as those system awakeners were performing system tasks and included Xiang Beifei in their tasks, then their systems would become under Xiang Beifei's control. And now, the situation with Zhao Yingguang was the same. Even though Zhao Yingguang had no system interface to Xiang Beifei, the deity that the other party communicated with was essentially an altered version of a system. That is to say, when Zhao Yingguang used his heavenly Tao laws on Xiang Beifei, it was as though he was enveloping Xiang Beifei within his heavenly Tao laws, just like including Xiang Beifei in a system task. Who would have thought it would actually be like this? A realization dawned upon Xiang Beifei, and he had a deeper understanding of being a Tao master. So, the so-called Tao embryos worked this way. It appeared that not only did the human race possess Tao embryos, but other E-tribes did as well. However, their Tao embryos didn't seem as rich as those of the human race because among the humans, everyone awakened to different systems. Some cultivated the Tao of leisure, some cultivated the sword Tao, and some cultivated defensive Taos. Of all sorts, each eventually connecting with the heavenly Tao laws. But it was different for the E-tribes. During their cultivation, they seemed to be able to connect only with a single heavenly Tao law. For example, the 3 heavenly connection realm masters from the Panjiao race all communicated with the same deity, a ram-headed figure. No wonder the Eternal Night Demon King and the Demon King of the Demon Tentacles want to plunder the human race's Tao embryos. Xiang Beifei finally understood why Hanxia had caught the attention of 2 E-tribe demon kings. Taoist Qingyang was right when he said the human race was a species favored by the heavenly Tao. Humans' Tao embryos were diverse and rich, and each person could choose a different Tao to cultivate. However, everyone in the E-tribes could only cultivate a single Dao. For instance, all members of the Panjiao race could only connect with the ram-headed deity's laws, and by extension, it was likely the same for the meat-winged monster's moon god race and the ghost mustache of remnant visage's demon tentacle race. The Daos they cultivated were all uniform. If that's the case, then the meat-winged monster and the ghost mustache must also cultivate some deity's laws. Xiang Beifei's eyes lit up. Before Xiang Beifei entered the heavenly connection realm, when he met the ghostly visage with ghost whiskers and the meat-winged monster, he did not see their Dao embryo. One reason was that Brain Deficient and Yi Ji were only in the late phase of orifice transforming, having not yet communicated with the heavenly Dao, and another was that at the time Xiang Beifei hadn't yet comprehended what Dao was. As for why he initially saw the human race's systemic Dao embryos in Zhuzhou, it was because the human race's Dao embryos were relatively special, though it could also be due to modifications made by his grandfather. It was hard to say. But now, he had acquired abilities akin to controlling a system. He was eager to encounter the meat-winged monsters and the ghostly visage with ghost whiskers of the heavenly connection realm again, and to thoroughly examine what Dao these two races cultivated. Back when he was in the orifice transforming phase, he had managed to severely beat He Kaiwei and Zhu Yiji, not to mention his capabilities now. Li Qianluo's voice rang out in Xiang Beifei's mind once more. Masters of various races at the heavenly connection level are familiar with each other, and your identity from the Kangji Abyss is too sensitive. It's better to disguise your cultivation level as late-phase orifice transforming so as not to arouse suspicion and to fish in troubled waters more effectively. You can disguise yourself, right? Yes. Xiang Beifei had truly never lost to anyone in disguising his aura. He was quite experienced in that regard. That's good. They have 3 at the heavenly connection level, and it's unnecessary for us to clash with them here. I'll handle it, Li Qianluo said. Sure, Xiang Beifei replied. Zhao Yingguang was not aware of what Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo were communicating. He scanned both with his divine laws and discovered that the auras they exhibited were merely at the orifice transforming phase. Humph! Just 2 orifice transforming phase members of the transforming clan daring to venture into the land of inheritance without even communicating with the heavenly Dao, truly overestimating themselves. Zhao Yingguang scoffed disdainfully in his mind, but he did not show it outwardly. He knew of the transforming clan's capabilities. These 2 might still have other uses. The land of inheritance was perilous, with many areas requiring exploration. Having them along, they could be used as bait in critical moments to test the path. If there was danger, their deaths would spare his own people from harm. Are there only 2 of you from the transforming clan here? Zhao Yingguang asked. Li Qianluo immediately responded. This place is too dangerous. We got separated from our clan elders and are currently searching for them. I see. I happen to know the elders of your transforming clan. You can accompany us for now, for mutual support. Zhao Yingguang said proudly. That would be great, thanks, Li Qianluo cheerfully responded. After a moment, Zhao Yingguang asked, What's with this statue? Have you figured it out yet? Don't know, we just got here, Li Qianluo replied. Shall we go up to see what the statue looks like specifically? She suggested. Perhaps there's more to this statue than meets the eye? Okay. Zhao Yingguang nodded slightly and gestured to his subordinates. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo immediately leapt into the air, slowly flying upward, followed by the masters of the Panjiao race. Do you recognize those 2 heavenly connection masters? Li Qianluo quietly asked. No, I don't recognize most of the masters here. Xiang Beifei had not even known that so many masters would gather here just a few hours earlier. I knew you were too ill-informed. That tall, thin one with a goatee and dark face is called Zhao Shkai, and that brightly dressed woman is Zhao Dihong. Both are quite strong, and it would take quite an effort to fight them, Li Qianluo said. You seem to know quite a bit? I did my homework before I left. I recognize almost all the heavenly connection masters. Li Qianluo hummed confidently. Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. This girl was rough around the edges but clearly meticulous and even did her homework, which was quite commendable. Their flying speed was not fast, almost leisurely rising higher. They soon saw the statue's knees, then thighs, and then arms. The giant statue's left hand was like a 5-finger mountain, resting on its thigh, and even the thickness of the nails was about half a meter. Xiang Beifei even noticed a chip was missing from the fingernail of the index finger. The craftsmanship of the statue was rough, but it retained the necessary bodily lines and textures. Even the veins on the statue's arms were visible. However, the right arm was out of sight, likely too far away, obscured by the fog. As they reached the statue's abdomen, suddenly a deep whooshing sound came from below, followed by the surrounding mist swirling, as if a shadow had flashed past. What was that? The group stopped on the statue's ribs, intently watching to the left. Zhao Yingguang also furrowed his brows, looking into the fog, but he saw nothing. There was a black shadow just now. Xiang Beifei had not discerned anything in that thick fog. He flew forward a distance, looked up and said, "It should have gone that way. You too, go up and check," Zhao Yingguang said to Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo. His tone was even more of a coercion than a suggestion. In his view, his commands as a heavenly connection stage being were not to be defied by two mere orifice-transforming members of the transforming clan. Li Qianluo readily nodded. "All right." Xiang Beifei glanced at Zhao Yingguang and, not inclined to say much, proceeded upward. Zhao Yingguang and his companions followed closely, not taking it lightly. This place is not so simple. The ancient gods were extremely powerful, and the ruins they left behind are naturally not that straightforward. Even masters at the heavenly connection stage could not be completely safe when entering. A moment of carelessness could lead to disaster. They continued to fly up along the ribs of the statue, and it was only when they were about to reach the scapula that they saw another arm. "This statue is way too tall. We're only seeing the second arm now," a young member of the Panjiao race couldn't help but say. "I wonder what pose the statue is in." That being said, if the statue has any hidden transformations, then the entrance must be the mouth, right? Another Panjiao race individual leaped onto the palm and looked up, figuring that they would have to fly up at least 100 more meters to reach the mouth. Xiang Beifei was staring intently at the hand they had just seen, feeling increasingly uneasy. "What are you looking at?" Zhao Yingguang noticed Xiang Beifei, who had been silent the whole time. Xiang Beifei said in a deep voice, "There's something wrong with that hand." He remembered clearly that they had passed by the statue's left arm just moments ago, and at that time, Xiang Beifei even thought that the statue's fingernails were ridiculously thick, and he had also noticed that one of the statue's fingernails was missing a corner. And the hand in front of them was not the right hand, but the left, and the position of the missing corner of the fingernail was exactly the same as before. It was the same left hand they had encountered when they were passing the statue's thigh. "What's wrong with this hand?" Zhao Yingguang also looked at the hand. One of his subordinates was still standing on it, not quite understanding either. But just as his words fell, the stone hand suddenly clenched fiercely, its speed reaching the limit, and in a flash, it caught hold of two Panjiao race individuals. Crack! A sound of bones being crushed and broken was heard. Blood splattered, flowing out from the gaps between the fingers of the stone hand. The two Panjiao race individuals didn't even have the chance to scream before they were crushed into a bloody pulp by the giant hand. This sudden turn of events shocked everyone. Was the statue alive? But at that moment, the bloody left hand of the statue suddenly shot upward, disappearing into the mist, and now everyone was certain. "Damn it! There's something wrong with this statue," Zhao Yingguang shouted furiously. The two who had just died were, after all, experts in the god-refining stage, but they didn't have any chance to react against the giant hand. But this was not their fault. As things had happened too suddenly, even the three heavenly connection cultivators, including Zhao Yingguang, hadn't been able to save their own people. Zhao Yingguang originally intended to rush up to see if he could save the two, but at that moment, a whistling sound came from the mist again. The white fog was swept away, and a dark shadow flashed by once more. By the time they saw the dark shadow coming, they saw a towering giant hand slapping down towards them. The giant hand covered the sky and was as imposing as if the sky itself was falling, carrying a terrifying pressure, and the air became agitated. Now they vaguely understood what the dark shadow that had flashed by was. Zhao Yingguang let out a low shout and charged forward. A majestic and profound energy suddenly surged from his body. The golden light of the goat-horned human-bodied divine figure enveloped him, turning into a powerful beam of golden light that struck at the giant hand. Boom! However, the terror of the giant hand exceeded their imaginations. Zhao Yingguang thought he could withstand it, but the hand was like an immovable mountain, instantly shattering his golden light. His power was blasted apart, causing Zhao Yingguang's face to drastically change. Scatter! Scatter! Zhao Yingguang shouted, and Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong, the two heavenly connection experts, also quickly grabbed their subordinates and hurriedly flew to the side. Boom! The giant hand slapped onto its own chest, emitting a huge and muffled boom that sounded as if the sky were falling and the earth was splitting apart. The noise was so thunderous it made everyone's eardrums hurt. The entire stone statue seemed to tremble. Such a terrifying sound involuntarily made everyone's hearts quiver, and they couldn't help but swallow hard. This is too terrifying, Xiang Beifei couldn't help but mutter. He suddenly realized, as these cultivators flew above the stone statue, in the eyes of the kilometer-high statue, they might just be a few fleas. With one slap, it would be like how they squashed mosquitoes that bit them. Only now they had become the mosquitoes. Run! Run! Li Qianluo hurriedly pulled Xiang Beifei to escape. So much for sticking together and looking out for each other. But Zhao Yingguang and the other two Heavenly Connection realm cultivators only cared about protecting their own subordinates. They didn't bother about the life or death of the two foreigners, not even bothering to lend a hand. Only Li Qianluo seemed to remember to pull Xiang Beifei at the critical moment. This girl clearly was much more reliable than Zhao Yingguang and the others. Of course, in reality, Xiang Beifei didn't really need help. His speed was much faster and he had more than enough ability to dodge. However, Li Qianluo always seemed to regard him as someone who needed protection. I was careless, too careless. How can this stone statue be so terrifying? Li Qianluo leapt into the air and said with her heart still palpitating. What sort of place is this land of inheritance, where even the stone statues are alive? Xiang Beifei inquired. But no one answered him. Another piercing howl came from the sky as another hand reached out for Zhao Yingguang and the others. Clearly having missed before, the huge statue had come back for more. Outwards! Zhao Yingguang commanded. The space here was sealed off, all spatial abilities were useless, and direct translocation through space was impossible. So they had to rely on the formidable flying speed of the Heavenly Connection realm to dodge. But they soon realized, despite their Heavenly Connection strength, the statue's speed was not slower than theirs. Thud! Thud! Terrifying booms echoed everywhere. The fog around them suddenly turned frantic, being condensed together by some bizarre and powerful force. Before they could fly out, that giant hand, following them like a shadow, swept in from the front to cut them off. What the hell? Zhao Yingguang watched in shock as the giant hand, which for some reason had appeared in front of him, moved with startling speed and ferocious momentum, leaving him no choice but to endure the hit. The curled horn at the back of his head quickly extended. The horn evolved in the air, tapping into the laws of heaven and earth. A series of mighty divine powers exploded forth to meet the giant hand. Crack! His proud horn was directly snapped off. Zhao Yingguang let out a miserable scream and was sent flying. Those subordinates he had been protecting were scattered. One of the Panjiao race cultivators in the god-refining phase received a direct hit. He simply couldn't withstand the force of the slap and was crushed with his bones shattered and soul dispersed. There was no chance he would survive. Be careful! Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong shouted in shock and anger, rushing forward to catch the flying Zhao Yingguang and avoid the hand. But the raging force enveloped them too, sending them flying as well. Now the Panjiao race cultivators were scattered, chaotically flying about in the air, and at that moment, a howling sound rose again in the sky. Two giant hands, with cries echoing between them, reappeared and smashed down towards the wildly flying crowd. Boom! The two hands clapped together, unleashing an earth-shattering explosion. The feeling was like when mosquitoes fly in front of your face, and everyone reflexively claps their hands to squash them. Two of the Panjiao race's god-refining phase cultivators couldn't dodge in time and were directly hit. Under such terrifying power, they couldn't possibly survive. The two massive hands quickly separated, and inside, the Panjiao race cultivators had been squashed into a blur of blood and flesh. What was even more shocking was that the statue suddenly stretched out a thick finger, scooped up the mass of flesh, and then brought it to its lips. Everyone looked up along that hand and saw a huge, stern, and dull face suddenly appear before them, gazing down from high above as it sucked on the finger coated with flesh and blood. This giant gray face was extremely large. Within the visible range, its edges were impossible to see. However, its features were sharply defined. The eyes were like two pitch-black pits, the nose was high, and the mouth was tens of meters long. And this stone statue was sucking its fingers in its mouth, seemingly savoring the flesh it had just smashed. The appearance of this terrifying face made every cultivator present shudder. Especially, the behavior of it sucking the blood and flesh from its fingers chilled the cultivators of the Panjiao race, because just a few seconds earlier that blood and flesh had been one of their comrades, who was turned into mush and swallowed in the blink of an eye. The black, slightly dull eyes of the statue were wider than these people's bodies. It then turned towards the remaining terrified experts of the Panjiao race, and reached out its hands to start slapping at them. "What are you doing standing there? Run!" Zhao Shikai roared, wrapping up some of his people and retreating downward, but the revived face of the statue showed an impatient look and relentlessly chased after the Panjiao race experts, its speed not at all slower than theirs, who were in the heavenly connection realm. Boom! With a clap of its hands, another expert of the Panjiao race was reduced to mush in the statue's hands. Zhao Yingguang, his horn broken, was both shocked and furious at such an unexpected change. He no longer dared to resist this terrifying statue, and as he led his people in a desperate escape, he glimpsed Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo from the corner of his eye and faltered slightly. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo were not hiding at all. They stood in the air, rested their chins on their hands, and thoughtfully observed the statue, occasionally exchanging words. They simply did not bother to evade because the statue seemed to not even notice them, focusing only on slaughtering the Panjiao race cultivators. Why doesn't the statue go after them? Zhao Yingguang was immensely annoyed in his heart. He had originally planned to use those two as bait in a critical moment to give his people a chance to escape, but he hadn't expected that his own people would be killed off one by one, while those two remained unharmed. Not only that, those two were so calm in the face of the giant statue, and it seemed like the statue did not even attempt to attack them, just targeting the Panjiao race. But soon Zhao Yingguang made a startling discovery. Those two, clearly visible, could not be sensed at all, as if they had become part of the background. This shocked Zhao Yingguang. If he could not sense them, didn't that mean the statue couldn't sense them either? Could the abilities of the transforming clan be so powerful? "Hey, you can also use orifice perception to hide yourself?" Xiang Beifei asked. Yes. What a coincidence. You can do it too." "Yes, that big guy can't sense our presence, which is quite good. Haha, it'll drive the broken horn mad." Li Qianluo chuckled quietly. Both of them were quite at ease facing the statue. They stood where the statue's gaze could not reach, and it couldn't detect them. As for saving the Panjiao race, neither Xiang Beifei nor Li Qianluo had the inclination. After all, Zhao Yingguang had had ill intentions from the start. But Zhao Yingguang was not ready to give up. Thinking of staying out of it? No way. Zhao Yingguang muttered under his breath and immediately pulled his subordinates towards Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo. He knew clearly that these two must have some method of disguising themselves. Now that his side was being hammered by the statue, if he could pull these two into the fray, he could force them to use their abilities to protect their own people. Zhao Shikai and Zhao Dihong also noticed the anomaly in Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo and understood Zhao Yingguang's plan, immediately leading their people towards them. "We need to run," Xiang Beifei said. "Let's go." Li Qianluo also saw the intentions of the Panjiao race experts, but they were very sly. Before the Panjiao people could get close, they dashed away in a smoke. seeing Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo suddenly speeding up and disappearing without a trace. Zhao Yingguang was stunned, and then his face turned as red as a liver, furious beyond measure. Those bastards! They must be Heavenly Connection Realm experts. At this moment, if he couldn't recognize the cultivation level of Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, then he had lived in vain. Their speed in escaping was impossibly fast. Such speed was unreachable in the orifice transforming phase. Only Heavenly Connection Realm experts could achieve it. Zhao Yingguang's group also wanted to run following Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, but the statue seemed to have targeted them, instantly blocking their path and slapping at them again. Slap! Another god-refining phase expert of the Panjiao race was killed by a slap. Zhao Yingguang felt so angry he almost spat blood. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo had no intention of concerning themselves with the life and death of the Panjiao race. The strength of this statue was very formidable, and even if they joined forces, they might not be able to defeat it. Since they had no ties to the Panjiao race, running away was their priority. They quickly ran away from that area, and the fog ahead dissipated somewhat. The dense mist seemed to have thinned, and after running a certain distance, visibility greatly improved. But the scene ahead also astonished them. Looking ahead, there was only a terrifyingly huge wall that soared into the clouds, extending up into the sky as if it were holding up the heavens. This wall was very wide, blocking their path, making it impossible to go further. Xiang Beifei had never seen such a gigantic city wall before. It almost seemed to split the heaven and earth in two. He walked to the base of the wall and sized it up. The wall was very rough, with a dense seam every few dozen meters, as if it had been built with huge strips of stone. Xiang Beifei knocked on the wall. Thud! 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 The wall emitted a dull sound, very solid and thick. Even with the strength of the Heavenly Connection Realm, it seemed impossible to shatter it. What in the world is this place, to have such a tall wall? Li Qianluo exclaimed, touching the wall. Xiang Beifei took 2 steps back, looked to the left, and then said, "There's a gap over there." They followed the base of the wall to the left, walking forward for around 300 to 400 meters, finally reaching a corner and then realizing that the wall wasn't meant to block the road ahead, but rather it seemed to be encircling something. They continued following the corner forward, flying another 1,000 meters, when suddenly they spotted a gap, seemingly rectangular, like a massive entrance. From inside, a roaring, rumbling sound could be heard. This sound also made Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo become alert, as whatever could produce such massive noise was definitely not simple. "Should we go in and have a look?" Li Qianluo asked. "Sure," Xiang Beifei replied without objection. Having come all this way without a specific purpose, casual exploration seemed fine. But they hadn't taken 2 steps when suddenly, a sharp scream erupted from inside the wall, filled with terror, as though something horrifying had been witnessed. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo exchanged glances and quickly ran towards the source of the sound. Ahead stood an incredibly tall stone column, ludicrously high, roughly several hundred meters high with a diameter of about 10 meters. Soon after, they saw a head rolling on the ground, eyes wide open, displaying an expression of death. This head was bloody, with sharp ears and yellow hair, but eerily, it had no face. Blood was still spurting from the head, probably as it rolled, and the blood pooled on the ground, extending towards the column where the ground was covered in a pool of red blood. On closer inspection, it seemed like the head's body had been crushed by the column, precisely on the neck, severing the head, and the body was directly crushed into a bloody pulp. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo both gasped. Within this head, a trace of the soul still remained, already shattered, brutally crushed. Not even the soul could escape, truly horrifying. "Is this also another race that came in?" Xiang Beifei asked. Li Qianluo touched her chin, pointed her finger at the faceless head, pondered for a moment and said, "Not quite sure. This little yellow hair. Looks like it's from the lion race, but they have faces." She looked up, following the column upward, but it was too tall, still towering into the clouds, unclear why it stood there. But at that moment, there was a thud, the ground trembled slightly, and then the 100-meter-high column started rising rapidly, as if being pulled out by something, making the air grow thick. Boom! As the two pondered what the column was all about, suddenly, the column smashed down towards them. Crap! Li Qianluo shouted, quickly pulling Xiang Beifei to the side to run. The column harshly struck the spot where they had just been standing. The whole ground shook violently, and the sound rolled on. Had they not run fast, they might have borne the brunt of that sky-reaching pillar's impact. The two quickly concealed their presence again, but soon realized the column's target was not them, rather the faceless head, which under the terrifying pillar's strike, crumbled like paper, completely destroyed. Then they saw a pair of large feet descending towards them, this time without the mist to obscure their view. They clearly saw that the feet belonged to an incredibly tall giant, soaring into the clouds, 1,000 meters tall, just like the stone sculpture they had seen before, both immensely terrifying beings. And that sky-reaching pillar-like stone column, was it possibly the giant's cane? Boom! 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 The giant slowly moved away, each step causing a terrifying tremor, like an earthquake, that also left them both utterly astonished. Is this the tribe of giants? Xiang Beifei finally understood what that wall was all about. If there were giants a kilometer tall living here, the wall they first encountered might just be a wall of a giant's house. Now, it seemed like they had entered a giant's home like tiny mosquitoes, accidentally being squashed as insignificant bugs. Li Qianluo suddenly realized and said, I understand now. This is the giant spirit race. The giant spirit race? Xiang Beifei had never heard of it. Li Qianluo, stroking his chin, said thoughtfully, This race is overwhelmingly powerful. I heard they are born with the strength of the orifice transforming stage, and they can step directly into the heavenly connection realm when they grow up. But I thought the giant spirit race had gone extinct. How could they be in this land of inheritance? Has no one ever mentioned it before when they came in? Xiang Beifei asked. Li Qianluo shook his head slightly. I don't remember, but I think there must have been some anomaly here. The special thing about the land of inheritance is that it connects to the edge corner airspace, and it's also the key to going there. Maybe the giant spirit race used some method to get in, or maybe he arranged something. Who is he? Xiang Beifei asked. Li Qianluo hesitated for a moment and then said, The deity of the land of inheritance. Xiang Beifei watched the giant who was slowly striding away with his cane go, thud, thud, and then turned his head to look at Li Qianluo, speaking solemnly. You surely didn't come here just for the so-called divine inheritance, right? I don't care. I'm just here to have fun, Li Qianluo said with a grin. Xiang Beifei's gaze flickered slightly. At that moment, Xiaohe gently tugged at Xiang Beifei's ear and quietly said, Woof woof. I know. Xiang Beifei communicated with Xiaohe in his mind. Although the giant they had just seen was over 1,000 meters tall with strength definitely in the later stages of heavenly connection, such a terrifying being was not something they could provoke. However, Xiang Beifei had seen what heavenly Tao laws the giant was connected to. It was just darkness, an endless land of darkness. Merely looking at the heavenly Tao they were connected to was quite shocking for Xiang Beifei. What heavenly Tao the giant spirit connected to, Xiang Beifei could not even ascertain. However, he still felt a familiar aura, the same as the Tao embryo. Only after the giant had gone far did Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo continue their journey. This time, they did not walk along the wall. It was obviously unwise to do so. Instead, they both flew up into the sky. Flying up to 5,000 or 6,000 meters, they finally saw the top of the wall, which was covered with a layer of stone skin, probably to shield from wind and rain. Probably no one had ever seen such a large house. Where the giant spirit race lived could already be considered a mountain. Looking ahead, there was not just one giant house but also other crude stone houses, at least a dozen of differing heights, but the shortest was still 2,000 to 3,000 meters. Some of the houses were not constructed from huge stone slabs but seemed more like the giant spirit race had hollowed out a mountain and turned it into a dwelling. Thud, thud, thud. In this village, 7 or 8 giant spirits were slowly moving. Actually, calling their movement slow was not accurate since each of their steps spanned hundreds of meters. Their movements were not slow at all. Even the swinging of their arms was as quick as lightning. It only seemed slow because Xiang Beifei and his companions were so tiny that watching these giants move toward the distance appeared lethargic. Another giant spirit was lying face up by the road, seemingly asleep, snoring loudly. Each breath they exhaled seemed to whip up a terrifying whirlwind in the air. Quite horrifying. At that moment, Li Qianluo, as if discovering something, lit up and pointed ahead, saying, "Look there! Quick!" At the other end of this enormous village stood a range of mountains, hidden in the white mist, partly visible. These mountains were incredibly tall, at least 4,000 or 5,000 meters. Each mountain was full of holes, as if corroded by insects, with green vegetation growing inside them, much of which was flourishing. Many mountains appeared to have been cut off, with huge iron chains passing through the holes in the mountainsides and hanging mid-air. These chains were enormous, identical to the ones that had appeared initially in the sky, with each link being over 10 meters, covered in moss, and even supporting the growth of some trees. Upon seeing these mountains locked by iron chains, Li Qianluo also became very excited. "It should be right over there," she exclaimed. "Is the land of inheritance of the gods there?" Xiang Beifei queried. "Yes, it is said that the gods placed their land of inheritance in the Desert Stone Cave on Bone Mountain. This must be the Desert Stone Cave on Bone Mountain." Li Qianluo nodded in confirmation. Desert Stone Cave. Xiang Beifei furrowed his brow. Was this the place? This was a location constantly mentioned by his grandfather's system interface. Moreover, he recalled that it had also been mentioned in the Pioneer Stone left by Xiang Tianqing. Xiang Beifei took out the Pioneer Journal. He had already repaired the Pioneer Stone last time, and many of the data had been restored. However, he hadn't known these locations then and hadn't paid them any mind. He flipped through a few pages, quickly finding the page about Bone Mountain and carefully read the handwriting from Comrade Xiang Tianqing. "I need to check out the Desert Stone Cave on Bone Mountain. Surely, the answers I seek are there." So, were the two of them also aiming to go there? A strange surge of emotion suddenly swept through Xiang Beifei's heart. According to Li Qianluo and the other tribespeople, this land of inheritance would only be reforged every 50 years, remaining closed at other times. But the Xiang couple had left several years ago. If they truly needed to come to the Desert Stone Cave on Bone Mountain, they would not have been able to enter it a few years ago. If this place really held the key to the answers Xiang Tianqing and his wife were seeking, could it mean that they would wait until now to enter? Emotions began to ripple in Xiang Beifei's heart. In truth, he felt no actual connection to the Xiang couple. The only person he truly cared about in this world was his grandfather. But the words his grandfather had spoken last time had left him deeply unsettled for a long time. His memories were fragmented, and he often distinguished his pre-transmigration self from his post-transmigration self, preferring to be his pre-transmigration self. Yet somehow the Xiang couple seemed just like his parents. It was a very strange feeling. Would they indeed show up here? Would they? "What are you daydreaming about? Let's go. Let's go to that place." Li Qianluo pulled at Xiang Beifei, urging him impatiently. Xiang Beifei snapped back to reality, chased the chaotic thoughts from his mind, and after a moment of silence, he said, "Okay." He caught up with Li Qianluo's pace. But traversing this vast giant spirit village was not simple, for from high above, it was clear that the giant spirits seemed to be grasping at something. Soon Xiang Beifei understood, these giant spirits were grasping at them. In the eyes of the giant spirits, the sudden influx of so many from the E-Trib looked like invasive tiny mosquitoes wandering annoyingly through their village, needing to be wiped out. At this moment, they relentlessly chased the intruding E-Trib, clapping their enormous hands with gusto. The movements of each giant spirit, seen from afar, looked very clumsy. Yet, no one dared to underestimate them, for despite their awkward speed, they were not the slightest bit slower than them. Each adult giant spirit possessed the strength of the heavenly connection realm. Incredibly terrifying. Boom! 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 Each clap of the giant spirit's hands thundered. A sound that might mean little to each giant spirit but was like a thunderous roar to them, deafening. Why don't they fly over from above? Li Qianluo found it odd, but she quickly understood why flying wasn't feasible. There seemed to be a massive oppressive force enveloping the village, making it exceedingly difficult to fly. They could barely manage a few meters before feeling greatly strained, their speed involuntarily slowing down, seeming only slightly alleviated when flying closer to the ground. Consequently, Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo had no choice but to fly lower, delving into the village, advancing along the village paths. Almost immediately as they descended, they encountered several tribesmen with ears as tall as antennae. At that moment, one of the giant spirits had its eyes on them. Seeing Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, it hurriedly flew toward them with a look of urgency. "This Dao friend, could you lend a hand? Our divine sense race will be greatly indebted to you." One of the green-haired old women of the Heavenly Connection realm dodged a slap from the giant spirit and shouted at Xiang Beifei and his group. Li Qianluo and Xiang Beifei exchanged glances, but before they could respond, the sky darkened ominously as a giant spirit's hand swept over, crashing down with a thunderous noise, flinging the old woman into a wall corner, immediately splattering green blood all over the wall. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo gasped. That green-haired old woman, a strong Heavenly Connection realm cultivator capable of communicating with the Heavenly Tao and possessing incredibly robust physical qualities, still couldn't withstand that slap and was directly smashed to a pulp, a truly shocking sight. The most eerie thing was that despite such a terrifying collision, the wall didn't even budge. However, the green-haired old crone from the divine sense race didn't fall just like that. She quickly turned into a shadowy figure and, with an expression of alarm and anger, plummeted towards the ground. After all, a strong person of the Heavenly Connection realm wasn't so easy to kill. Their orifice souls had reached a level where the destruction of their bodies wasn't fatal, but would just severely damage their vitality. The old crone didn't have time to worry about her subordinates either. She ran very fast, but the other cultivators of the divine sense race weren't so lucky. Their abilities only reached the orifice transforming stage, and faced with such a powerful blow, let alone cope, the mere residual force from the slap on the green-haired old crone blew them away, hurling them into a huge pile of rocks, their fates unknown. At that moment, a giant face in the sky turned around, looking straight at Beifei and Li Qianluo. Its hands, large enough to cover the sky, crossed over and pressed down, the bones in the giant palms making a boom, boom, boom joint-cracking sound. Then they too were slapped down. Both were startled and ran off without looking back. But being targeted this time wasn't so simple. They could use orifice perception to hide themselves, not letting the giants sniff out their existence. But if they were seen, that was a different story entirely. Whoosh, whoosh. The two gigantic palms came down on them like swatting mosquitoes. For a moment, Beifei quickly recalled in his mind how to withstand this strike. Such terrible power, neither abruptly stop nor stand aside would work, and even those two bricks would be useless because the palm was too big. It was hundreds of meters wide, like a football field, and probably before the golden patterns on the bricks could spread, the palm could slap him into doubting his life. Beifei's black and white spiritual power quickly condensed in front of him and spread out all around, meeting the palm head-on. The two vastly different types of spiritual power, black and white, began to rapidly evolve, forming mysterious ripples, which stood against the two giant palms. The giant palms pierced through this terrifying fluctuation, and the black spiritual power immediately began to block the power concentrated on the giant palms. Helpless against the overwhelming size of the palm and its swift motion, everything happened in the blink of an eye. There was little power they could nullify, and the palm still came smashing down. Boom! The air became scorching hot, like a 100-meter-high wave that rolled out. Fortunately, due to the barrier of the black and white spiritual power, the palm was slowed down as if it had hit water, and faced with some resistance, its speed was slightly reduced. Beifei and Li Qianluo quickly leaped out and ran towards the corner ahead. Thud! 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 The giant spirit race man chased after them furiously, his footsteps deafening and terrifying. The two ran to a fork in the road and turned into another alley. At least in the eyes of the giants it might seem like an alley, but in reality it was very broad, with the gap between two walls alone being no less than a kilometer. "Quick! That big rock!" Li Qianluo shouted, pulling Beifei towards a 10-meter-high rock, and then both immediately used their orifice perception to conceal their breath and hid behind the boulder. Thud! 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 The distant footsteps stopped, and Beifei could now see a huge foot stepping on the edge of the rock they were hiding behind, just a few meters away from crushing them. "Don't move a muscle, and don't use your spiritual power. I understand that the giant spirit race has a very strong perception. They can determine our location based on the airflow and the aura of spiritual power we emit," Li Qianluo warned sternly. For the giant spirit race, invisibility was obviously useless because that also required spiritual power, which would just reveal their presence more. The best thing for them now was to respond to every change by remaining unchanged. The giant palm lingered near their feet, apparently searching for their tracks. After a while, the sky suddenly darkened, and the giant spirit raceman crouched down, apparently searching the ground for them. His rigid, lifeless face looming like an enormous curtain, blocking out the sun. He seemed to sniff lightly, smelling the lingering scent in the area, but with just a light inhalation, a tornado seemed to form around him, churning air currents and causing the rock they were hiding behind to sway, absolutely terrifying. Luckily, the orifice perception of both Beifei and Li Qianluo was quite strong, keeping their scents tightly concealed without being detected. The giant looked around, failed to find anyone, then stood up, roared, and ran off in another direction. Screams soon erupted from that area. It was unknown which of the tribe people were flattened by the giant spirit raceman's strike. "This is too terrifying." Li Qianluo patted her small heart, still feeling the aftershocks of fear as she spoke. Xiang Beifei peeked out from behind a rock, and after confirming that there were no giant spirits around, said, "We need to get out of this village quickly and head to Desert Stone Cave. Do you still remember the way? These massive walls, if you can't fly, it feels like walking through a maze." Li Qianluo muttered, "I have a rough idea of the direction." When Xiang Beifei had flown up high to get an overview of this place earlier, he had memorized the general layout of the large village. He signaled for Li Qianluo to follow and then returned the way they had come. They ran about 7 or 8 kilometers forward, then turned right, but as soon as they turned the corner, they saw a young man with a large pincer on his left hand fleeing in terror. Another giant spirit, after a ferocious swipe, rushed towards them. Detour! Detour! Xiang Beifei was in no mood to care about the life and death of other trib cultivators. The giant spirits here were beyond confrontation, so it was more important to protect himself first. He recalled the map of the giant village in his mind and replanned their route, turning to run in another direction. But perhaps too many trib people had come in, stirring up the giant spirits, who were now chasing and killing the trib throughout their village. Every few steps, they could see several trib people being pursued, and the ground was littered with bloody remains. Half a head, half a leg, bodies torn in two. Extremely gruesome. The large contingent of the trib that had come in seemed to have not taken the existence of the giant spirit race into account, resulting in severe losses. Fortunately, they managed to stumble out of the massive village by holding their breaths, finally arriving at the edge of a cliff. Across the cliff were the mountains full of holes. Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave. Xiang Beifei stopped at the edge of the cliff, looking at the mountains across from him, his eyes flickering with a glint of light. In front of him was a gigantic river, 200 to 300 meters wide, seemingly encircling the mountain range and blocking everyone's path forward. The river was very quiet, with no waves, but its surface was black, emitting a strange aura. "We finally got out." An excited voice came from behind him. Turning his head, he saw a trib cultivator with purple light in his eyes. Although he only had the strength of the orifice transforming stage, he had managed to escape from the giant village, and his mood was understandably jubilant. The man's eyes shone like 2 bright purple gems, eerily beautiful. As he flew to the edge of the cliff, he didn't pause, anxious to keep moving forward. Whoosh! His figure turned into a streak of purple light, leaping from the cliff. However, The man had just flown 2 meters out from the cliff when his face suddenly changed color and his body fell swiftly, as if violently yanked by something. What the hell? He let out a terrified shout, trying to struggle, but he was utterly helpless against that force. Splash! The man with purple eyes fell straight into the black river and disappeared beneath the water, without even causing a splash. Only a few ripples spread out on the surface, which quickly returned to calm. And the man never emerged again. The purple-eyed man's race was unknown, but the aura he exuded just now definitely had the strength of the mid-stage of orifice transforming. Such a cultivator had real power, yet when faced with the Blackwater River, he fell into it without any resistance. It was as if an invisible hand in the river had pulled him down, leaving him no chance to resist. Several E-Tribe cultivators flew out from the cliffs a kilometer away, also chased by the giant spirit with terror in their hearts. 3 clueless cultivators, in their panic to cross the river, had barely flown out when they fell into the river with screams. There's something wrong with this river. Everyone realized this, and their expressions grew increasingly astonished. With this lesson in mind, the remaining 4 or 5 E-people immediately stopped, standing uncertainly by the cliff edge. At this moment, an old man in blue robes who had reached the heavenly connection realm led his men charging out of the giant spirit village. He had also intended to cross the river, but upon seeing many cultivators standing by the cliff, he immediately stopped with his subordinates. "What has happened?" the blue-robed elder asked aloud. But no one responded to him. Some cultivators just glanced at him before withdrawing their gazes, remaining silent. On another cliffside dozens of meters away, there were approximately a dozen cultivators of various races who had reached the heavenly connection realm. These E-Tribe cultivators had fled the giant spirit village earlier than Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, but they too were stopped here. They had clearly already noticed the eerie nature of the river, yet they did not speak up to stop those who came after them from attempting to cross, watching as those clueless E-people rushed towards the water. Everyone had come to the land of inheritance for the chance at fortune. Since they were competitors, they would rather have the newcomers test the crossing. If those people died, it meant one less rival. And if a way to cross the river were found, they could follow suit. It was a win-win. Hence, when other cultivators inquired, they pretended to hear nothing. "Fellow Taoist, may I ask what has happened?" The blue-robed old man saw Xiang Beifei and approached with his subordinates, asking politely with a bow. Even though he was unaware of what had happened before, he was not careless. As a master of the heavenly connection realm, he maintained the necessary vigilance. With so many cultivators at the orifice transforming and God refining stages not crossing the river, even though he himself was at the heavenly connection realm, he was not so arrogant as to risk his life. "Something's wrong with the river. You'll fall if you fly over," Xiang Beifei responded without concealment, since the other had inquired politely. "There's a problem with the river?" The blue-robed old man stood solemnly at the cliff edge, picked up a palm-sized stone from the ground, and hurled it towards the Blackwater River, intending to test the river. He concentrated his spiritual power on the stone, which emitted a red glow, turning into a streak of light in midair, heading for the opposite shore of the river. However, the stone had barely been thrown 3 meters when it suddenly seemed to be caught by something. The force covering it vanished instantly, and it fell vertically into the Blackwater River. Plunk! The stone, once covered with powerful spiritual power, dropped into the water like a common pebble, simply and without splashing. The blue-robed old man's expression changed slightly. As someone at the heavenly connection realm, anyone with a discerning eye could tell how powerful the stone thrown by the old man was. Even a casual toss could not be caught by an orifice-transforming cultivator, not to mention throwing it across a river hundreds of meters wide. Throwing it 10 kilometers would not have been a problem. Yet despite such force, the stone sank within less than 3 meters. Now he no longer underestimated the Blackwater River, nor did he dare to risk crossing it. The others exchanged glances, watching the cultivators from other races warily, waiting for someone to take the lead in discovering a way to cross. Meanwhile, they looked for a secluded spot on the cliff to avoid the pursuing giant spirit. The blue-robed elder bowed again to Xiang Beifei, speaking earnestly. "Thank you for the information, fellow Taoist." "No problem," said Xiang Beifei. The blue-robed old man spoke frankly. "This is the second time you've helped us. I really must thank you." "Oh, is that so?" Xiang Beifei turned his head, looking quizzically at the elder, as he did not recognize him. The blue-robed old man explained, "Have you forgotten, fellow Taoist? Earlier, in that terrifying village, several of us were cornered by a giant spirit, nearly losing our lives. It was you who passed by and deliberately punched the giant spirit, drawing it to another location and aiding our escape." After pondering, Xiang Beifei vaguely remembered. When he and Li Qianluo had been moving through Giant Spirit Village earlier, they were often blocked by the giant spirits. He had indeed been targeted several times. However, at that time, his intention was not to rescue the E-Tribe people but to punch the giant spirit's arm, then use the giant spirit's tremendous force along with the recoil to propel himself away and run faster. But it seems he had inadvertently saved them by chance. Perhaps, in the blue-robed old man's eyes, he was like a hero who couldn't walk away from injustice, suddenly appearing to punch the giant spirit, drawing its attention and creating a chance for them to flee. Li Qianluo, standing beside, immediately said with a smile, "Oh, so we saved you then. No worries. We always have warm hearts. If we can save someone, we must lend a hand. We saved so many on the way here, it's hard to keep track." Xiang Beifei's mouth twitched. "My goodness, this girl really dares to speak. So that's how it is." The man in green robes nodded slightly, praising. "It's rare to meet someone as warm-hearted as Taoist in such a place full of interests and dangers." After a while, he slapped his forehead and said with a smile, "Look at my memory. Somewhat rude I am. I am Fu Qiuzi, a member of the Tianmu race." A slit suddenly opened between his eyebrows, revealing a third eye. That third eye emitted a golden light, solemn and reverent, harboring an extremely powerful force within. He gave a gesture, then closed the eye again. "So it's the Tianmu venerable Fu Qiuzi. I've long admired your renown." Li Qianluo obviously knew some of the E-Trib experts, and immediately said, "I dare not accept such praise, dare not." Fu Qiuzi didn't put on airs. His gaze lingered a moment longer on Xiang Beifei. The impression the young man had left on him was indeed too profound. He dared to confront that terrifying giant spirit head-on, and then managed to escape from the giant spirit's clutches. His strength was truly astonishing. "I still don't know the esteemed names of the two Taoist friends. Forgive my poor eyesight, I can't discern your origins." Fu Qiuzi was aware of many Heavenly Connection realm experts among other E-tribes. However, he had no recollection of these two young people in his mind, and he couldn't even figure out what race they were. Before Xiang Beifei could answer, Li Qianluo rushed to say, "My name is Li Qianluo, and he is called Xiang Beifei. We come from Kangji Abyss." Xiang Beifei raised an eyebrow. How did they become people from Kangji Abyss now? Li Qianluo, as if she had read Xiang Beifei's thoughts, said, "Idiot, I just saw some practitioners from the Transforming Clan over there." This time, saying we're from the Transforming Clan wouldn't work. People from Kangji Abyss don't often go out and are relatively low profile, which makes it easier to fake our identities. Xiang Beifei nodded thoughtfully. Come to think of it, this girl is quite shrewd with strong adaptability. But then again, he now had to seriously learn from Li Qianluo about the knowledge of the E-Trib people because up to now, he had encountered many strange E-Trib people, and he recognized only a few. Fu Qiuzi sincerely said, "So you are Taoist friends from Kangji Abyss. No wonder you are so formidable." Li Qianluo explained in her mind to Xiang Beifei. "This old man is quite genuine. Tianmu race people generally do not easily reveal their eyes. When they open an eye in the middle of their forehead and look at others, it signifies a form of respect." Open in the middle of the forehead? Can it also be open somewhere else? Xiang Beifei asked. "Geez, you're such a blockhead. How do you not know anything? Rushing here unprepared, what would you do without me?" grumbled Li Qianluo. Xiang Beifei. He didn't even know so many people would gather here in the first place. However, Li Qianluo didn't say much more and continued to explain. The Tianmu race people can open their eyes on every part of their body, like on their back, in their palms, on their shoulders, and so on. Very strange. Don't underestimate their eyes. The eyes are their means of attack, and each eye possesses special abilities. Xiang Beifei's gaze flashed briefly as he sized up Fu Qiuzi's heavenly Dao laws. In the black and white world seen by Xiang Beifei, the heavenly Dao laws connecting with Fu Qiuzi took the form of a broad-shouldered deity. But this deity had 9 eyes, and at this time all 9 eyes were converged on the face, which looked somewhat eerie. Woof woof! Xiaohe barked excitedly. Just now, Fu Qiuzi had used his eyes to observe Xiang Beifei, and at this point Xiang Beifei had already established a connection with the heavenly Dao deity's law that he had been communicating with. He could control these 9 eyes. However, Xiang Beifei did not let Xiaohe cause trouble since there was no malice from the other party. He couldn't be bothered to do anything. At this moment, more and more cultivators kept rushing out from the giant spirit village and stopped on the cliff. Since many cultivators were gathering on this side of the cliff and not crossing the river, the cautious ones also realized something was off and stopped to inquire about the situation. Not all E-Trib people were willing to go into detail about the situation, but the relationships between different tribes were relatively close, and after some mutual probing, they mostly understood the gist of the matter. Xiang Beifei sized up the E-Trib people in front of him. These E-Trib cultivators were almost all humanoid, but their appearances were extremely bizarre. Earlier, outside, he had only seen the Panjiao race and Soding race people fighting, with the other E-Trib folks watching secretly, so he hadn't had the chance to observe them. Now that everyone was blocked by this Blackwater River, he did have time to get to know these E-Trib folks. The E-Trib people, for the most part, looked very similar to the human race, except for some extremely strange characteristics on their bodies. From what he knew so far about the E-Trib people, apart from the relatively weaker races like Yumeng and the Skeletons, the stronger races included the Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage, Meat-Winged Monster, Soding race, Panjiao race, and Tianmu race. Of course, almost all the tribes that were able to come here were very powerful, such as the Zhexiong tribe. They had a large, round bulge protruding right in the middle of their chest, which was very strange. Xiaohe and Era were discussing the size of each Zhexiong tribe member's bulge. The pretty Zhexiong tribe lady looked like she had a large pumpkin stuffed in her clothes. Her cultivation was in the late god refining stage. The other 2 looked as if they had watermelon stuffed inside, with cultivation in the early orifice transforming stage. There were also sizes like cantaloupes, apples, and even jujubes. The leading Tianmu venerable beautiful big sister, with the strongest ability, Xiaohe confidently declared that she definitely had a melon seed stuffed in her clothes. So Xiaohe's conclusion was that the stronger the Zhexiong tribe member, the smaller the bulge under their clothes. Woof woof. Xiaohe asked Xiang Beifei what he thought. What do I think? I roll my eyes to look. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders and couldn't help but criticize. They all look so, like that, and you still find joy in judging? This tribe even has males with it, you know? Xiang Beifei couldn't help but make a sharp comment. Unlike human women whose fruit sizes under their clothes are in pairs, the Zhexiong people only stuffed one. It couldn't get any stranger or weirder, not to mention a full-bearded man with a protruding front, which looked like he was about to headbutt someone when making eye contact. It just seemed bizarre no matter how one looked at it. However, the more powerful the Zhexiong tribe, the smaller the bulge and the more they resembled humans, which was perhaps the reason. Then there was the feather race of the E-Trib people, a race with human bodies but covered in bright feathers, which were a very formidable weapon for them. There were also the cultivators from the Jiaojing tribe, who looked no different from humans, except that their feet were crossed over each other. Ordinary members of the Jiaojing tribe would move by hopping, but these cultivators floated in midair with the use of spiritual power. As for the sidewalking tribe of the E-Trib people, they were even more special. Their upper bodies were exactly like humans, but their lower legs were deformed, as if twisted by 90 degrees, only allowing them to move left or right, unable to go forward or backward. And then the Qixia race, a tribe whose outward appearance was undoubtedly human, but their tongues grew upside down. Normally, a human's tongue root was at the back, but for them it was in the front. Their tongues were black, so when they opened their mouths to speak, one could see that flexible black tongue, which could extend several meters out of the mouth, making it their combat weapon. The bizarre E-Trib folks also broadened Xiang Beifei's horizons. In their own eyes, perhaps they looked perfectly normal, but to Xiang Beifei, each of the E-Trib people was incredibly deformed, resembling humans yet diverging in some aspect. Of course, the heavenly Tao laws connected to these E-Trib people were very similar to their physical forms, very singular, possessing only a single ability, unlike the human race which had diverse system capabilities, reaching a state of blooming flowers. At that time, many cultivators from the E-Tribe who had narrowly escaped death from the giant spirit village fled the area, blocked by the river waters and worried that the giant spirits would pursue them, so they kept their distance from that region. But so far, the giant spirits seemed to have only chased people within the village, driving them out of the settlement and then leaving them alone, which had relieved all the cultivators. Groups of them gathered together in 3s and 5s, starting to discuss the situation amongst themselves. Most races suffered extremely heavy casualties, especially those with lower strength in the god-refining stage. They had been brought here to try their luck at a fortunate encounter, but encountering the giant spirits had been beyond their expectations. Many cultivators in the god-refining stage had perished at the hands of the giant spirits. Although many had escaped from the giant spirit village, the river before them now posed another barrier that prevented everyone from advancing. This river held a terrifying power, making it difficult even for those in the heavenly connection stage to cross it. A member of the E-Tribe sank slowly to the water's surface while holding a rock, but the moment the rock touched the river water, the dark waters corroded and decomposed it instantly. Their spiritual power, when it came into contact with the river, also disappeared without a trace, much like a stone sinking into the sea. What kind of river water is this, with such strong corrosive properties? My mysterious iron jade spear even shattered, and this is a divine artifact that even heavenly connection stage experts cannot destroy. A heavenly connection stage expert from the feather race was beating his chest in regret, as his prized weapon had been destroyed by the river waters. Everyone was trying to figure out a way to cross the river, but all attempts failed without exception. Hey, Xiao Bei. Don't call me Xiao Bei. All right, Xiao Bei. Do you remember anything about this river? Li Qianluo asked doubtfully. Xiang Beifei curled his lip and said, "You're asking me? I thought you knew everything. Knowing everything only covers everything. But there are millions of things in this world beyond my power." Li Qianluo spread his hands. Xiang Beifei was tossing pebbles into the river and musing at the same time. The pebbles he threw didn't travel more than 5 meters, all of them flying halfway before falling straight down. Xiang Beifei ceased throwing pebbles and pondered for a moment before saying, "This is somewhat like Ruishui River." Ruishui River? To the north of Kunlun is a water, its force unable to surpass mustard seed, thus called Ruishui. What Xiang Beifei could think of was only this substance existing in mythology. Ruishui, an extremely formidable entity, history records say, 800 realms of quicksand, 3,000 depths of Ruishui, where goose feathers cannot float, and reed flowers surely sink. In Ruishui, not even goose feathers could float across, and if a cultivator fell in, they'd be directly corroded completely, with no chance to fight it with spiritual power. Is there a way to cross the Ruishui? Li Qianluo asked. Hard to say. I'm not very clear either. In fact, Xiang Beifei was pondering over his own breath soil, because breath soil is also a very special existence in mythology, said to be a magical artifact used by Yu the Great for controlling waters, capable of infinite growth. Up to now, Xiang Beifei had not encountered anything that could destroy breath soil. However, he had quietly tried it just now. A small clump of breath soil dust fell into the river, and indeed it was not corroded by the dark waters here. But the problem was, there was a strong sinking force at the river bottom dragging the breath soil down, and even he could not resist it. If not because he had only tried it a bit on the riverside, he might not have been able to retrieve it. The farther from the river bank, the stronger the swallowing force and dragging force. Cultivators might manage to fly out a meter or two without issues, but if they flew further, they would drop straight down, not even following a parabolic path, but plummeting straight down. Of course, Xiang Beifei had thought about other ways, like filling up the Ruishui River with breath soil. Many people from the Yi tribe began to walk around the river, trying to see if they could find a bridge or something similar. Xiang Beifei also moved along with the main group. As Xiang Beifei walked, he kept looking around the crowd, torn but also very eager. Li Qianluo noticed Xiang Beifei's preoccupied appearance and called out, "Hey, Xiao Bei, who are you looking for? Why do you look so troubled?" "Nothing. I get it. You're looking for your companions from Kangji Abyss, aren't you? Wanting to know if they made it here? Afraid of being captured and scolded?" Li Qianluo asked teasingly. Xiang Beifei was non-committal. In fact, he was looking for those two people. Those two utterly irresponsible individuals who had said they were going to find some answers and then never returned. As the seal of Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave was opening exactly during this period, this might be the closest Xiang Beifei had ever been to those two. He now also needed answers. Why had his grandfather, whose cultivation was at least in the immortal realm, suddenly lost his memory? Why had he said they were out of hope? His grandfather had led the Hansha people south to establish Juzhou. But what exactly had caused him to suddenly feel despair and even lose his memory? Did it have anything to do with the Bone Mountain Desert Stone Cave? Are the answers here? Xiang Beifei searched tirelessly for any Yi-Trib people within sight. In his eyes, no matter how these Yi-Trib people disguised themselves, Xiang Beifei could clearly see the heavenly Tao laws they communicated with, and everything about their divine presence was evident at a glance. However, he didn't find those two people. The Weak Water River was very long. They had flown for 7 to 8 hours before finally circling back to their starting point. It's worth noting that everyone here was a powerful cultivator. Most of the teams were led by experts at the Heavenly Connection realm. Considering the flying speed of such a realm, it indicated just how vast the area between Bone Mountain and Desert Stone Cave really was. With no success in crossing the river, everyone had no choice but to stop and discuss strategies on the riverbank. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo found a secluded small valley away from the Yi-Trib people to rest and recuperate, taking advantage of the good geographical position and relatively open view. The Tianmu race's Fu Qiuzi also took his people to rest nearby. They had been following behind Xiang Beifei, clearly trusting that following such a formidable expert after the incident at Giant Spirit Village was the correct decision. Xiang Beifei didn't stop them. Strange? Li Qianluo, sitting on a large rock, couldn't help but express her doubt. According to previous records, there shouldn't have been any mention of this Black Water River. Didn't you say that there wasn't a giant spirit race here before either? Xiang Beifei asked. Right, so I think something must have happened to Bone Mountain and Desert Stone Cave in recent years. No wonder they suddenly take it so seriously. Li Qianluo muttered. Who are they? Xiang Beifei asked. Li Qianluo came to her senses and said with a grin, No one. They, of course, refers to the cultivators present here. Xiang Beifei's gaze flickered slightly. He knew Li Qianluo wasn't telling the truth because the cultivators present also hadn't anticipated these changes. This they definitely referred to people Li Qianluo knew. This girl had many secrets, quite unlike the Yi-Trib people. What was most bizarre was that Li Qianluo herself was a Heavenly Connection realm expert, yet Xiang Beifei couldn't see which heavenly Tao laws she communicated with. However, Xiang Beifei didn't inquire further. Everyone had their own secrets. It wasn't necessary to disclose them all, including himself who wasn't from the Kangji Abyss and had many secrets too. The black water of Ruishui River blocked the path of all cultivators, leaving many Yi-Trib people waiting. Some even began to entertain the idea of leaving but were reluctant to do so and thus stayed. After all, there was still a month left, which wasn't so bad. But just at that moment, a powerful aura suddenly charged towards the small valley where Xiang Beifei and the others were. Ferocious and swift, its presence felt before the figure appeared. Damn you people from the Kangji Abyss! Meet your doom swiftly! The voice was extremely angry, the sound rolling in waves, without any politeness, as a terrifying aura blasted towards Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei slightly frowned and, with a casual wave of his hand, dispersed his powerful spiritual power in front of him. As the raging aura approached, A swirl of black and white energy instantly invaded and disintegrated the turbulent breath. By the time that breath reached Xiang Beifei, it had reduced to merely a breeze. Whoosh! 3 heavenly connection realm experts appeared before them. On closer inspection, it was those 3 from the Panjiao race. "It's you guys again." Xiang Beifei was somewhat impatient. Just now, during the giant spirit attack, he and Li Qianluo didn't bother dealing with the Panjiao people and just left. But these 3 guys seemed to be lucky enough to have made it here as well. "You 2 from the Kangji Abyss really deserve to die, daring to trick us earlier by claiming to be from the Transforming Clan. And because of you, we lost so many of our people," Zhao Yingguang said to Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo with a resentful face. "Are you crazy? Your people were smashed to death by the giant spirit. What does that have to do with us?" Li Qianluo retorted. "Enough talk. All of you from the Kangji Abyss deserve to die," Zhao Yingguang shouted angrily. "How do you know we are cultivators from the Kangji Abyss?" "I don't recall telling anyone," Xiang Beifei asked. Fu Qiuzi, not far away, sensed something amiss and immediately spoke up. "Daoist Xiang, it definitely wasn't us who revealed this. We always dislike gossiping." However, Zhao Yingguang spoke up. "What? Even now, you want to conceal your identities? Just now, other race cultivators indeed heard your conversation. You meddlers from the Kangji Abyss deserve to die. So that's how it is." Xiang Beifei nodded slightly, recalling how there had been many people by the shore, and though Fu Qiuzi spoke softly when they conversed, the high-level cultivators present likely overheard due to their acute hearing. "However, that's still no reason for you to trouble us." Xiang Beifei looked calmly at Zhao Yingguang, whose horn had been broken off by the giant spirit but was obviously capable of regrowth as it was now intact. If this guy continued to make unreasonable trouble, Xiang Beifei wouldn't mind breaking it off again. "Our Panjiao race and you from the Kangji Abyss have an irreconcilable enmity. You just caused us to lose 13 of our tribesmen. An act I will never forgive. My brother died because of you. If I don't kill you today, my heart will never be at peace." Zhao Yingguang shouted furiously. "The dead brother?" Xiang Beifei had no recollection of Zhao Yingguang's deceased brother. He didn't even know if he was plump or lean. "Have you absolutely decided to blame us for the tribesmen killed by the giant spirit?" Xiang Beifei asked in confusion. At that time, they didn't want to attract trouble, so they deliberately claimed their cultivation was only at the orifice transforming stage. However, Zhao Yingguang planned to send them out as expendable scouts. Hence, when the giant spirit attacked, they simply chose not to intervene and left. So this shameless fellow actually thought it was them who caused the death of his tribesmen. Nonsense! Whether directly or indirectly, the death of our tribesmen demands death. Zhao Yingguang shouted viciously. "Shoo! Shoo! Shoo!" His horn emitted a golden glow, transformed into a stream of light, and soared into the sky, exuding a domineering aura. This commotion also attracted distant E-Trib cultivators. Watching the excitement seemed to be human nature, and even the E-Trib people were no exception, as many cultivators gathered around. "What's this Panjiao fellow freaking out about now? Do you even need to ask? They're accustomed to being unreasonable. Even if you just walk past their house, they charge you a toll. Anyone who encounters them is unlucky. It's just because they rely on their natural racial superiority to be overbearing." "Who did they target this time?" "I just heard it's someone from the Kangji Abyss. Now there'll be a good show." The surrounding E-Trib people also despised Zhao Yingguang and the other 2 who suddenly started trouble. This race was notorious for blowing minor frictions out of proportion. But since they were very powerful, many slightly weaker races chose to suffer in silence. Therefore, when Zhao Yingguang of the Panjiao race picked a fight with Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, everyone sympathized with them, aware that these 2 unfortunate souls were likely to suffer greatly today. "Xiao Bei, do you need my help?" Li Qianluo asked. "No need." Xiang Beifei had also heard the surrounding discussions and knew what the usual reputation of the Panjiao race was, but he did not take it to heart. Instead, he looked at Zhao Yingguang and calmly said, "Turn around and go back, and you can still live. Today I want to see who kills whom." However, Zhao Yingguang was convinced that his brother had died because of Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo. Immediately, the horns on the back of his head continuously elongated and stabbed towards Xiang Beifei. The horns of the Panjiao race were extremely potent, a source of pride for them that could be used for offense and defense. When attacking, they could virtually ignore any spiritual power barriers. When defending, the horns could formulate various strong defenses to block attacks. Unless faced with a tremendously irrational and fearsome existence like the giant spirit, no cultivators of the same realm from the E-Trib could match them. That was why their horns provided them the capital to be overbearing. Whoosh! Zhao Yingguang's horn instantly pierced through the void, aiming at Xiang Beifei. The air turned scorching hot in an instant. The ferocity of the attack made many masters of heavenly connection apprehensive, for if it were they in his place, they might not handle it any better than Xiang Beifei. This young man is probably in big trouble. Zhao Yingguang's cultivation is mid-heavenly connection, but his strength is no weaker than those in the late stages of heavenly connection. Still too young, without the company of his clan's elders, he shouldn't have conflicted with someone like Zhao Yingguang. Many shook their heads in sympathy for Xiang Beifei. The strength of Zhao Yingguang was witnessed by all. Even though Xiang Beifei was an outstanding youth from the Kangji Abyss, getting involved with such a person so early on was unlikely to bring any benefits. Xiang Beifei simply raised his head calmly, watching the sharp horn. His eyes gleamed faintly black and white, instantly discerning the heavenly Tao divine principle connected by Zhao Yingguang. At that moment, the divine semblance of a ram human deity was solemn and dignified, its eyes emitting a powerful glow, staring loftily down at Xiang Beifei. Ha! This divine principle unexpectedly emitted a rolling horrifying bellow and then extended its hand, an overwhelming pressure rolling tumultuously, swatting towards Xiang Beifei. Just you. Xiang Beifei slightly lifted his eyelids. A single thought. The hand of the divine principle stopped in the void, unable to advance an inch further. The visage of the ram-human divine principle abruptly changed, clearly not understanding what had happened. Quickly, its eyes showed a look of shock and rage. There is no principle arrogant enough to confront me. Xiang Beifei stretched out his hand and grabbed. His hand seemed to traverse ancient eons, instantly seizing the neck of the divine principle, lifting the ram-human deity as if lifting a small goat. The ram-human deity desperately tried to struggle, but found itself completely unable to break free. The others did not see how Xiang Beifei contended with that ram-horn divine principle. They couldn't even see the face of heavenly Tao as Xiang Beifei could. Yet they saw Xiang Beifei reach into the void, and suddenly the fierce Zhao Yingguang halted mid-air, his unstoppable horn seemingly losing all its power, its sharp momentum utterly gone. How is this possible? The previously ferocious Zhao Yingguang exhibited an incredulous expression. To think his strength was at mid-heavenly connection, just a notch away from the late stages. The power erupted from his horn, apart from the terrifying existence like the giant spirit, faced no real challenger among other E-Trib people. However, such a powerful strength was actually blocked by Xiang Beifei with just one hand. I remember your horn was broken just a moment ago. Xiang Beifei looked thoughtfully at Zhao Yingguang. Recalling the tragic experience he had just endured at Giant Spirit Village, Zhao Yingguang's face turned pale, and he shouted fiercely yet fearfully, "I will kill you!" Spiritual power once again burst wildly from his body, pouring into the massive Panjiao, the tip of the horn erupting with terrifying power, attempting to repel Xiang Beifei. Then, just pluck it out. Xiang Beifei merely kept talking to himself and then gently clenched his hand. Crack, crack, crack. In everyone's astonished eyes, Zhao Yingguang's proud giant horn started to show cracks like porcelain, covered with web-like clear fissures that extended to the back of his head. Bang! The massive giant horn of Zhao Yingguang in the air shattered into pieces, turning directly into shards that sprinkled out like golden light, blossoming into a dazzling display of golden fireworks that lit up the sky. What? This turn of events shocked all E-Tribe cultivators. Any cultivator who knew Zhao Yingguang was aware of how formidable his Panjiao was. They had initially thought that in this contest, Xiang Beifei would be at an absolute disadvantage and would be horribly defeated by Zhao Yingguang. But no one expected that without Xiang Beifei hardly taking action. Zhao Yingguang's horn was directly shattered. My horn! My horn! Zhao Yingguang stretched out his hand, trembling as he touched the back of his own head. When he had encountered Giant Spirit, his horn had only been cracked a little by Giant Spirit and was not severely damaged. It quickly recovered by relying on his own spiritual power. But this time, Xiang Beifei had directly uprooted his entire horn, from tip to root. He could not even feel the existence of his horn anymore, as if he had lost control of his own horn. What did you do to my horn? Zhao Yingguang looked at Xiang Beifei in furious bewilderment. Xiang Beifei lifted his eyelids. Then his figure turned into a blur, reaching Zhao Yingguang in an instant, moving so fast that even Zhao Yingguang had no chance to react. Boom! A punch blazing with fiery energy landed on Zhao Yingguang's nose, directly blasting him away, smashing him toward the Heishui River. You dare! Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong, two Heavenly Connection Realm experts, also reacted, rushing to try and pull Zhao Yingguang back. They clearly understood what would happen if Zhao Yingguang fell into the Heishui River, the river that could devour everything. Once one fell in, one was surely doomed. Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong's cultivation was not weaker than Zhao Yingguang's. Zhao Sky's strength was even above Zhao Yingguang's. But as they grabbed Zhao Yingguang, his body suddenly lit up with black and white spiritual power, instantly shedding their grips. Their hands slipped, and Zhao Yingguang's body still flew toward the Heishui River. Zhao Yingguang's body crashed toward the airspace above the Heishui River, already 5 meters away from the shore. Just as he was about to gather the spiritual power in his body to fly back to the shore, a strong dragging force from the Heishui River pulled him into the river.
No!
Help! No! Zhao Yingguang screamed. Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong immediately used their horns to hook onto Zhao Yingguang, but soon their faces drastically changed. The terrifying dragging force of Heishui River was far beyond their ability to contend. If they did not let go, they feared they might die as well. Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong clenched their teeth, reluctantly letting go of Zhao Yingguang. Splash! Such a powerful Heavenly Connection Realm Master like Zhao Yingguang fell into the Heishui River like a sandbag, disappearing without even causing a splash. Zhao Yingguang, the widely feared master from the Panjiao race, never rose again. Silence fell over the entire area at once. All E-tribe cultivators were dumbfounded. They stared incredulously at Xiang Beifei, never expecting the powerful Zhao Yingguang to be blasted away by a young man and fall into the Heishui River. This guy, who did not die in the giant spirit village, ended up perishing at the hands of such an obscure young man. Since when did such a formidable young master appear from the Kangji Abyss? At that moment, all E-tribe cultivators were utterly shocked. You actually... Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong were also stunned. They had not expected to fail in pulling Zhao Yingguang back, watching helplessly as their comrade died before their very eyes. I had already warned him. Xiang Beifei lifted his eyelids and slowly said, in such a place, there was no need to show mercy. After all, whether Xiang Beifei killed Zhao Yingguang or not, given the domineering nature of the Panjiao race, the remaining two would come to trouble him anyway, so it might as well be more convenient to deal with one first. As for the remaining two, Xiang Beifei wouldn't mind taking them down directly. At this moment, no one saw that in the air there was an illusory shadow, and Xiaohe was gallantly charging forward, trampling the sheep-headed human-bodied divine law underfoot, and mercilessly tormenting it. The sheep-horned human-bodied law struggled, but in the face of Xiaohe, it was as if it had seen a ghost, with no power to resist at all. In an instant, the law was crushed by Xiaohe into a spiritual power light sphere, and then it condensed into a spiritual power crystal. A mid-heavenly connection spiritual power crystal. Not bad, Xiang Beifei commented, not disdainful. Although what he really wanted now was an early heavenly connection spiritual power crystal, this one was obviously better. Good job, Xiaobei. I knew you were amazing, Li Qianluo said with a giggly pat on Xiang Beifei's shoulder. Really? How did you know? Xiang Beifei asked back. A girl's sixth sense, Li Qianluo said playfully, winking. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders, looking doubtful. But at this moment, the onlooking Yi tribespeople were already in an uproar. They had not expected such a formidable cultivator to appear. Of course, in their eyes, it was Zhao Yingguang's own fault for being dealt with so miserably. Seeing such a brutal member of the Panjiao race being fiercely handled was incredibly satisfying for those tribes who had previously suffered at their hands. But out of the many tribes present, not all held the Panjiao race in regard, with many more powerful tribes present. On the rocks to the north, a group of people drenched in fresh blood stood watching. These people were all wearing the trailblazer attire of Zhuzhou and had more or less fatal wounds on their bodies, which were very conspicuous. They seemed to care little for these injuries, not even bothering to conceal them. Ghost mustache of remnant visage. In a place like the desert stone cave of Bone Mountain, how could they not get involved? Among this group of scarred individuals, a slender man stood out, but what made him noticeable was not his appearance, but his aura. He seemed somewhat sickly, very pale, and his aura was the weakest among them, but everyone subtly centered around him. This man had no particularly noticeable wounds, and compared to the other ghost mustache of remnant visage, he was the most normal-looking human. Cough, cough. The man coughed lightly. He looked as if he were afflicted with consumption, his pale complexion turning red with each cough. Strange, humans actually made it this far. The man's eyes flashed red. Humans? The surrounding ghost whiskers were slightly surprised. They were more than familiar with humans. After all, the bodies they occupied came from humans of Zhuzhou. High Priest, are you sure he is a human? Spoke a burly man beside him. This man had his head split in half as if it had been cleaved by the blade of a desolate beast but not completely severed, with red and white brain matter oozing down from the wound. Zhe once said, the one who destroyed the unrestrained base was a human named Xiang Beifei, who is very well known in the land of Zhuzhou. And this young man is called Xiang Beifei. Cough, cough, cough. The coughing man began coughing violently again. They had been planning their invasion of Zhuzhou for many years, but did not expect it to be ruined by a single human. That human had single-handedly slain all the ghostly visages. With such an important matter at hand, it was natural for him, the high priest, to receive this intelligence. Is he the one who has thwarted our plans time and again? The cleaved headman's eyes glinted fiercely as he licked the brain matter that flowed from his wound and said, I'll go and kill him. No rush. The coughing man shook his head slightly. That's right, this Xiang Beifei has managed to thwart our plans several times. He is clearly no ordinary individual, said another woman with a pleasant smile nearby. This woman was exceedingly pretty, exuding an indescribable beauty with her rosy complexion and bright eyes. In Zhuzhou, she would have been considered a beauty. However, all this charm was predicated on her silence. For once she spoke, her mouth would tear open dramatically, as though it had been violently ripped open, destroying the lovely visage she once had. Without killing him, how can we alleviate the hatred in our hearts? The cleaved head man asked. The split-mouthed woman gave the cleaved head man a sidelong glance and said, What's the difference between your impatience and the fool from the Panjiao race who was just killed? Are we just going to let him go? The cleaved head man said, discontentedly. Let him go? Cough, cough. The coughing man chuckled lightly. Now is not the time to stir up conflict. Killing him would cost us, and the tribes no weaker than us might just be waiting for us to lose a few of our own. This time passing through Giant Spirit Village, the ghost whiskers had suffered the least losses because they were the cunning demon tentacle creatures. It wasn't so easy for the giant spirits to swat them down. The coughing man looked to the left, where a sacred glow shone, marking the location of the moon god race. He then turned his gaze to another mountain peak, where a young man with a fan stood, and immediately a hint of wariness appeared in his eyes. There were several extremely powerful races present here, and his opponents were definitely not just those meat-winged monsters. After a while, he shifted his attention to the distant Xiang Beifei, his eyes glowing with eagerness. Such a fine body, it should suit me well. Cough, cough. On a rocky ledge, An exceedingly bizarre-looking young man lounged against a large tree, watching everything with ease, lightly waving a folding fan in his hand, and smiling faintly. This guy is quite interesting, go check his background. This youth bore the appearance of a human, almost indistinguishable from human features, yet for some reason, he seemed inexplicably eerie. Does the young master think he is not from the Kangji Abyss? Asked a middle-aged man beside him. The eerie young man's gaze swept over the E-tribe crowd in the distance and said, "Not necessarily. Those from the Kangji Abyss are usually low-key and don't like to show their faces, but that doesn't rule out some of the more rebellious ones." He revealed a devilish smile, then gently reached out with 2 fingers and caressed his hanging green hair, which shimmered with a strange glow, brimming with vitality. "I actually think he might be a real human. Speaking of which, we've no idea where the humans are hiding. The demon tentacle race with all their scars won't tell us, and neither will that crowd of underworld monsters with their dog-like demeanors and those wings. What are they thinking?" He muttered as if talking to himself, then laughed again without a care. "This is getting more and more interesting." Underneath several trees, a group of pure men and women with wings on their backs stood, dressed in immaculate white clothing and radiating a serene and peaceful aura. The moon god race, among all the races, they were the ones that appeared most approachable and friendly. Among them was a tall and burly young man, distinctive from the others by his 6 white wings and a halo above his head, making him the core of all moon god race members. "This young cultivator is very strange." The 6-winged youth spoke slowly. "Lord Qi, what does the divine edict say?" asked a 4-winged man standing beside him. The 6-winged youth wore a gentle smile, the ring of light above his head pulsing softly, twinkling like an antenna. All moon god race members fixed their eyes on that white halo above his head, their looks filled with reverence. It took a while for the 6-winged young man to speak calmly. "The god says we must be humble. We must be humble." All the moon god race cultivators repeated the phrase, bowing their heads in deep respect. The 6-winged youth smiled gently, accessible and exceedingly gentle. He looked at Xiang Beifei again and said, "But the god also says, those who practice sin should be punished." "Be punished." All the moon god race cultivators repeated the phrase once more, their heads bowed. It was as if they were devout repeaters. The 6-winged youth nodded in satisfaction, the halo above his head shining even brighter. While numerous powerful races were observing on the other side, Xiang Beifei faced an altercation with the 2 remaining heavenly connection experts of the Panjiao race. Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong looked at Xiang Beifei with fury and sinister intent, wishing to tear him into thousands of pieces, but they forcefully held back from attacking. Although they were accustomed to acting tyrannically, the problem was that the young man before them was clearly not easy to provoke. Zhao Yingguang's cultivation level was comparable to theirs, yet he was killed in just 1 confrontation. There was no guarantee they would fare any better against him. Not to mention, there was always that giggling, seemingly harmless girl standing by Xiang Beifei's side. Although the girl had not showed any signs of power from the recent encounter, they knew she was also a formidable heavenly connection expert. The atmosphere grew tense, spectators watching the 2 Panjiao race experts, eager to see what these 2 would do next. Would they rush forward and engage Xiang Beifei in a do-or-die battle, or would they swallow their pride? Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong felt extremely frustrated internally. Retreating without a fight would undoubtedly be a joke to the other races. They were used to throwing their weight around, and now, with one of their own being killed and then turning tail, it would be a disgrace to their proud selves. But if they fought, they were not confident of victory. However, just then, a strange sound came from afar, and the ground began to tremble, startling everyone. "What's happening? Have the giant spirits come after us again?" Many cultivators exclaimed in surprise, turning their gazes towards the direction of Giant Spirit Village. The giant spirits were currently their most dreaded creatures. The consequences would be unimaginable if those terrifying beings pursued them again. But they didn't see the giant figures that blotted out the sky. Instead, streaks of golden light seemed to light up the clouds. The golden radiance in the sky intertwined with each other, illuminating the faces of each cultivator, and soon they formed massive chains. These chains linked one loop to another, each loop tens of meters in length, tightly clinging to the sky as if they had locked the entire heavens. Isn't this? The sky is locked? Doesn't that mean the heaven and earth formation of the land of inheritance has been reactivated? Then aren't we unable to get out? Many cultivators' faces changed drastically upon seeing these enormous chains. The land of inheritance had only just opened less than a day ago, and normally, there would be a month's grace period during the reshaping of this heaven and earth formation. They only needed to leave the land of inheritance within a month. However, nobody anticipated that the chains in the sky of the land of inheritance would inexplicably start connecting again less than a day after they had shattered. Once the chains locked the heavens, this area would become sealed, and it wouldn't open again for another 50 years. All the cultivators panicked. Being trapped in the land of inheritance and constantly facing the threat of the giant spirits that could lash out at any moment was definitely not a good thing. At this moment, everyone could no longer concern themselves with the feud between the Panjiao race and Xiong Beifei. Now that this incident had occurred, it was about whether they could leave this place. Many cultivators even contemplated retracing their original route to see if the way out was still untouched. But the thought of encountering the giant spirits again along the way dissuaded them. Jiao Sky and Jiao Dihong also took advantage of the chaos among the crowd and slipped away, not wanting to confront Xiong Beifei directly, and decided to plan from a long-term perspective. Xiong Beifei didn't pay attention to them either and instead contemplated the chains in the sky, an eventuality he hadn't foreseen. Has this kind of thing happened in the land of inheritance before? Xiong Beifei turned his head and asked Li Qianluo. Li Qianluo's brows were deeply furrowed, almost twisted into knots, seeming extremely surprised too. She shook her head and said, "There's no such record in the information left by our predecessors. The land of inheritance seems to be getting more bizarre by the day. At least, it is not quite what we had imagined." From the giant spirit village appearing at the beginning to the Black Water River encircling the desert stone cave at Bone Mountain, and now the heaven and earth formation that crumbled a day ago only to reshape immediately, this place seemed as if it had been altered, utterly different from what all the cultivators remembered. Xiong Beifei looked at the iron chain formation appearing in the sky, and after a long while he said, "It seems the only way to leave now is to find the inheritance. Since this was a land of divine inheritance, as long as one received the inheritance and recognition of the so-called gods, there should be a way to leave." "But the Black Water River is a problem," Li Qianluo muttered. The mountains with caves across were the Bone Mountain and Desert Stone Cave, where the divine inheritance they all sought surely lay. Yet, the Black Water River blocked everyone. Even masters of the heavenly connection realm couldn't fly over it. Anyone who attempted to cross would plummet directly. A gloom enveloped all the cultivators for a time. After the heavens had been sealed, many cultivators wanted to know if they could still leave, their only way out being to return the way they came. However, the giant spirit village was too perilous. No one could guarantee they'd make it safely through the giant spirit village unscathed. The demon tentacle race's foremost man was the first to volunteer courageously. He relied on his agile skills to traverse the giant spirit village again to search for an exit. It must be said that the ghost mustache of remnant visage race was truly formidable. Although they couldn't do much against the giant spirits, they could safely protect themselves. "We can't get out. The outside is sealed." Within just an hour, the foremost man brought back this news. His words directly extinguished all the hopes of the cultivators. "Really can't get out? Are you sure you searched all the entrances?" A person of the Qixia race asked anxiously. The foremost man coldly glanced at him and said, "If you don't believe it, feel free to check for yourself." The Qixia race member could only stay quiet. Asking him to brave the giant spirit village again was far too risky. "It's over. We can't get out. Does this mean we have to wait here until the next opening cycle? That's 50 years from now. Damn it. The desert stone cave at Bone Mountain is right there, unable to reach what is within sight. If we could cross the river and find the inheritance, we definitely wouldn't be trapped here." Many of the E-tribe cultivators started pounding their chests and stamping their feet, looking eagerly at the desert stone cave at Bone Mountain, filled with immense impatience. Perhaps there's a chance it could be unsealed after a month. No one knew who shouted this. Right, that's possible. Let's wait another month and see. This was their only hope now. All the cultivators had found places to rest and recover, and no matter what, everyone had to force themselves to calm down and wait for a month. Then we can only wait and see. Xiang Beifei was not in a hurry either. Since everyone was trapped here, waiting a bit longer didn't matter. However, he continuously kept an eye on both the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage and the meat-winged monster races, which also seemed to value this place significantly, having each dispatched 10 heavenly connection experts, showing their profound foundations. Woof! Xiaohe said, rubbing his hands together, wanting to teach these guys a secret lesson. Forget it, let's avoid conflict for now. Xiang Beifei shook his head. The sky was sealed, yet day and night still alternated on time. Time passed quickly, a whole month, and the chains of the sky still existed glaringly without any signs of fracture. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was quite proactive in this matter. They seemed to be showing off their skills, thus sending the cleaver-headed man out again to gather information. The cleaver-headed man did not refuse. He crossed the giant spirit village again. But the news he brought back was still not satisfying. It's still sealed, said the cleaver-headed man. At this, all E-tribe cultivators erupted. Other bold and skilled E-tribe cultivators, not believing the situation, risked great danger to secretly cross the giant spirit tribe, but soon he returned disheartened, as he too could not find a way out. The outside was indeed sealed, and it had become an irrefutable fact that all cultivators were trapped here. Now, everyone was trapped on the banks of the Blackwater River, having to guard against the giant spirit and also prevent being pushed into the Blackwater River by others with grievances. They could neither advance nor retreat, creating a sense of panic. The area was filled with over 100 races, each with 1 or 2 heavenly connection experts leading, and everyone was trying to secure their own position first. It was impossible for the E-tribes to get along harmoniously. Friction existed between different races before, some even to the death. Now that everyone was trapped with no way out, everyone was holding back frustration. Sometimes, when encountering a sworn enemy, the slightest provocation could lead to a major conflict. Bang! A scream came from afar. Another E-tribe cultivator was thrown into the Blackwater River. Xiang Beifei slightly lifted his eyelids, merely glanced lightly, then looked away. He had grown accustomed to this. The same scene had occurred countless times recently, with conflicts erupting sporadically, and life and death battles ensuing until one party died. But these matters had little to do with him. He was just cultivating his own Tao, pondering his matters. They are really too idle, still having time to fight to the death, Li Qianluo said, propping up his chin. Being trapped here with no way out, if we can't find a way, we might go crazy eventually. Fighting is also a way to relieve boredom, Xiang Beifei said. Is that considered relieving boredom? They're losing their lives, Li Qianluo muttered. By the way, those 2 guys from the Panjiao race have been out of sight recently. Ever since Zhao Yingguang was killed last time, Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong had not come to trouble him again, probably because they were unsure of defeating him and now were hiding somewhere. But just then, someone approached them. Upon closer inspection, it was the Tianmu venerable Fu Qiuzi. Fu Qiuzi looked around, and to prevent eavesdropping like last time, he waved his hand to set up a spiritual power barrier around him before asking, Taoist Xiang, Taoist Li, may I ask if you are interested in joining any faction? Faction? Xiang Beifei looked at Fu Qiuzi puzzled. Taoist Xiang doesn't know yet? The situation here has become very subtle. We can't get out, but the place is only so big. Currently, there's heavy fighting over territory, Fu Qiuzi said. Fighting over territory? Fighting over such a broken place, Li Qianluo muttered. Fu Qiuzi explained, where there are races, there will be disputes over territory. No one knows when the seal will be broken. Last time, many races suffered heavy casualties in the giant spirit village. weakening them severely. Now, some races with vendettas are eyeing them, so forming alliances with other races is the best way to protect oneself. Right now, the stronger races have already mustered their forces and started dividing territory. So, what are the currently larger forces? Xiang Beifei asked. To my knowledge, there are 3 forces right now, one led by the heavenly Tao expert, Flaming Six Wings of the Moon God race, self-proclaimed Light Valley. This force has the most cultivators, with 33 races confirmed to have joined them, as Flaming Six Wings is a very powerful, late-stage heavenly connection expert with many followers. Next are the cultivators of the Demon Tentacle race. The Demon Tentacle race is not weaker than the Moon God race. They are strong themselves and have recruited many experts. Currently, 31 races have confirmed joining them, self-proclaimed Dawn Alliance. Lastly, there are the cultivators of the Night Demon tribe. The Night Demon of the Night Demon tribe is also a very famous expert. He has also recruited many strong race experts, not weaker than the other 2 forces. Their force is called Heavenly Demon Assembly, with 28 races as followers, still in contact with the remaining races to absorb them into the assembly. Compared to the indifferent Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo, Fu Qiuzi had a deeper understanding of the situation here and explained everything very clearly. Then which alliance did you join? Xiang Beifei asked. Fu Qiuzi shook his head. None. Li Qianluo sized up Fu Qiuzi and said, Why haven't they approached your Tianmu race? Your Tianmu race is also strong. I really admire your eyes. The 9 eyes of the Tianmu race were extremely powerful. Although Fu Qiuzi almost faced extinction when confronting the giant spirit race, it was because the giant spirit was too strong, and most cultivators here found themselves helpless against it. In fact, if Fu Qiuzi were to confront a normal cultivator with his mid-stage heavenly connection cultivation, he would not necessarily be much weaker, perhaps even comparable to Zhao Yingguang. Fu Qiuzi said helplessly, To be honest, they did send people to find me, but our ancestral teachings forbid dealings with the Demon Tentacle race, so naturally I wouldn't go there. As for the Night Demon tribe and Moon God race, it would be possible, but... He paused, then continued, Zhao Sky and Zhao Dihong from the Panjiao race joined the Moon God race-led Guangmong Valley. The Panjiao race has always had good relations with the Moon God race, so I worry. In short, you 2 have helped us before, and if we end up on opposing sides, it would be difficult for me, which is why I didn't go. Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo exchanged glances. You really are straightforward, Li Qianluo remarked. In fact, when they originally helped Fu Qiuzi, it was unintentional, but he still remembered their kindness. Our Tianmu race always follows principles, Fu Qiuzi said. So I've decided to side with you too. Whatever camp you join, I will choose to stand with you, so that if conflicts arise later, we won't be on opposite sides. The situation here had completely changed, and if one didn't choose a side, going it alone would certainly make one a target. Fu Qiuzi had to consider his people and thus needed to learn to take sides. However, before doing so, he chose to inquire about the intentions of Xiang Beifei and Li Qianluo to join the same alliance with them, ensuring that it wouldn't be difficult for him. Even such a small place has started to become internally competitive, Xiang Beifei muttered to himself. Now, a tripartite standoff had emerged. Everyone was choosing sides, seeking powerful alliances. Not choosing a side meant being ostracized. Unable to advance or leave, and with limited territory, those with power raised their banners to lead, while those without could only follow others seeking protection. Xiang Beifei was pondering this when suddenly, a whistling sound came from outside, followed by a figure approaching and landing in front of him. Upon closer inspection, it was a cultivator from the Soding race, Sapu. Although they had never formally interacted, Xiang Beifei recognized him at once. At the very beginning, Sapu had a dispute with Zhao Yingguang and fought fiercely, all of which was witnessed by a crowd of cultivators. Taoist Xiang, I am Sapu from the Soding race. I've long admired your reputation. Sapu extended his huge claws, clasping them in front of his chest and slapping his own thorax, a gesture of courtesy in their Soding race. It's good to see you well. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly. Sapu looked straight forward and said, Taoist Xiang may not be aware, but I am very grateful to you. We have always had conflicts with the Panjiao race, and Daoist Xiong, by eliminating Zhao Yinguang last time, avenged us in a way, for which I want to thank you." Xiong Beifei did not speak, just looked at him thoughtfully. He knew Sapu's visit wasn't just about expressing thanks. Sapu continued quickly, "Not to conceal from Daoist Xiong. I come as a representative of the Heavenly Demon Assembly to invite Daoist Xiong to join. You must have heard about the current situation. It's a time of division here, and the Heavenly Demon Assembly also hopes to earn Daoist Xiong's support to find a way out of this place. What does Daoist Xiong think?" Sapu had revealed his purpose, extending an olive branch to Xiong Beifei. When Xiong Beifei killed Zhao Yinguang, all the cultivators had witnessed it. Although there were not a few stronger than Zhao Yinguang here, Xiong Beifei's decisive strike had left a deep impression on everyone. Joined the Heavenly Demon Assembly? Xiong Beifei had not yet had a chance to respond when suddenly another presence swept over and landed on the cliff. "Daoist Xiong, instead of joining the Heavenly Demon Assembly, why not join us in Guangmong Valley, following the will of the God of Light who will guide us out of this predicament?" A woman in white robes, radiating sanctity, walked towards Xiong Beifei. The woman, blessed with stunning beauty, stood out even in a crowd. She had 4 pairs of white wings on her back, fluttering softly, emitting a faint holy light. She approached with a smile, as if bringing the warmth of spring. "Excuse my intrusion, I am Kana, a 4-winged elder of the Moon God race," Kana said to Xiong Beifei, greeting him respectfully. "Moon God race." Xiong Beifei's gaze shifted slightly. Xiong Beifei was no stranger to the Moon God race, a race of beings whose appearance was holy, but once their murderous intentions were revealed, they would degenerate into the hideous horned, meat-winged monsters he had witnessed at Siho and the floating Immortal Isles. One absolutely could not trust individuals of this race. He had also vaguely figured out how to distinguish the strength of the Moon God race's experts. Those with 2 wings were basically below the Heavenly Connection Realm. Once they stepped into the Heavenly Connection Realm, they would possess 4 wings, and those in the late stages of the Heavenly Connection Realm would have 6 wings. Kana in front of him had the strength of 4 wings. She was unaware of what Xiong Beifei had done in Siho because the deaths of Rian and Yi Ji were very abrupt, and Xiong Beifei had covered his tracks well. So it was still unknown that it was Xiong Beifei who killed Rian and Yi Ji. She was here representing Light Valley to recruit him. Exuding an aura of sanctity, Kana spoke in an approachable manner. "Daoist Xiong, with such strength at a young age, you have obtained the recognition of our Divine Lord, who wishes to offer you a clear path." "Offer me a clear path? Has your Divine Lord found a way out?" Xiong Beifei asked, puzzled. "Not yet, but the Divine Lord has said that as long as we unite, we can get through these tough times together. Sincerity brings spiritual power. Our Divine Lord has always been protecting us, especially instructing us to establish Light Valley to lead all Taoist friends here out of darkness and into the light." When Kana spoke, her voice was crisp and melodious, highly persuasive. Even those with strong wills couldn't help but be drawn to her words. The Moon God race naturally possessed a charisma that others found hard to resist, which was especially effective in recruiting talents in times like these. "Who is your Divine Lord? That flaming 6 wings?" Xiong Beifei asked. Gently, Kana responded, "No, flaming 6 wings is God's messenger, responsible for communicating with the Divine Lord, conveying their will, and providing us with a way forward." Xiong Beifei pondered for a moment before saying, "I heard that the Panjiao race joined your Light Valley. Are you sure it's appropriate for me to join your Guangmong Valley?" "Our Guangmong Valley was established in accordance with the Divine Lord's wishes, tolerant, just, and loving. Zhao Yinguang instigated trouble first, which is witnessed by all, and now that everyone is trapped here, it's natural to put aside preconceptions and tackle difficulties together. The goal of Guangmong Valley is to provide guidance to Taoist friends of all races." When Kana said this, it seemed heartfelt and natural, inherently equipped with an irresistible persuasive power. If Xiong Beifei wasn't aware of the actions of the meat-winged monster and ghost whiskers of remnant visage against the human race in Hanxia back then, he might have actually believed this manipulation. Xiang Beifei observed the heavenly Tao laws related to the communication of Kana, seeing that perhaps due to the meat-winged monsters sacrificing themselves to the underworld, the divine laws above their heads appeared as a pool of spring water glowing yellow. However, it seemed that a terrifying monster was encased within the spring water, glaring at Xiang Beifei with cold eyes. Xiang Beifei smiled faintly. Now he knew how to deal with a meat-winged monster. Could a mere underworld spring overcome him? He was still contemplating how to handle the moon god race when another voice arrived. Taoist Xiang, the gates of the Dawn Alliance are also open to you. Another woman approached slowly. Turning his head, he saw the demon tentacle race's split-mouth woman. Ghost whiskers of remnant visage. Xiang Beifei frowned again. The split-mouth woman seemed to be smiling, her mouth splitting up to her ears. Her eerie appearance seemed like a provocation to Xiang Beifei of the human race. By her side was a burly man with his head split in half, familiar to those present and recognized for his strength, since he had managed to cross the giant spirit village several times as if no one was there. Taoist Xiang, I am you from the demon tentacle race, and this is my companion Zhen, specifically instructed by the high priest to invite Taoist Xiang. The split-mouth woman said, grinning with a ferocious wide mouth. The burly, split-head man looked at Xiang Beifei darkly, his disdain for Xiang Beifei not hidden in the slightest. Xiang Beifei remained non-committal. He knew that his identity could hardly be concealed from Ghost Whiskers of remnant visage. After all, with the capabilities of Ghost Whiskers, it was impossible not to have heard of him. Ziho's Ghost Whiskers had been destroyed by him 2 years ago, and what he looked like was certainly known to Ghost Whiskers. His presence in the land of inheritance was coincidental, and thus he had always shown his true face but had overlooked this fact. The split-mouth woman and the split-head man, both mid-stage heavenly connection realm Ghost Whiskers, had murdered pioneers of Jojo and taken over the bodies of humans. They were clearly aware that Xiang Beifei was human, yet they still came here to invite him, which was essentially a blatant challenge. Or perhaps it was a test of Xiang Beifei's reaction. But Xiang Beifei only looked at the two unwaveringly, without any reaction, seemingly indifferent to whom they possessed. Now, with 3 powers inviting Xiang Beifei to join them, the atmosphere had shifted distinctly, drawing many curious high-level fighters of various races. After all, Xiang Beifei had always been the focus of attention these days. Many cultivators wanted to know which power he would ultimately join. What faction do you think Xiang Beifei will join? A member of the E-Trib murmured quietly. It's hard to say. With Zhao Sky on the moon god race, I don't think he'll join them. It's likely a choice between the demon tentacle race and the heavenly demon assembly. I'm leaning towards the demon tentacle race. After all, their strength is witnessed by all. Many cultivators of the E-Trib were discussing fervently. Not every race chose to join the 3 major camps. Quite a few were still observing. There were various reasons for this, such as a particular race having 3 mortal enemies, each having joined a different faction. This made it difficult for them to make a choice. They had to opt for the lesser hatred. However, most of the E-Trib cultivators tended towards the Dawn Alliance led by the Demon Tentacle race because a male from the Demon Tentacle race repeatedly passed through the giant spirit village unharmed. Relative to others, this race seemed quite powerful. Following them meant sure security if they could ever leave this place. All cultivators were awaiting Xiang Beifei's answer, eager to know which of the 3 major powers would gain such a powerful master. Xiang Beifei was silent for a moment before he slowly spoke. I appreciate everyone's kind intentions, but so far, I have no plans to join any faction. This statement surprised many cultivators. In this situation, he actually chose not to join any of the 3 powers. They looked at one another. Not joining one of the 3 powers at this time didn't seem like a smart move, especially since they had personally sent envoys to invite him. Other races didn't get such treatment. They had to apply to join on their own. Taoist Xiang, won't you reconsider? At this time, joining an alliance is much more important than fighting alone. Sapu spoke up. Who told you he's fighting alone? Can't you see me? Li Qianluo asked, hands on her hips. Sapu was slightly taken aback. He couldn't quite gauge Li Qianluo's depth and felt a hint of wariness in his heart. Still, I hope Daoist Xiong will reconsider. If you change your mind, you can always look me up. I'll be able to introduce you. Sapu wasn't aggressive about it, nor did he look down on Xiang Beifei for not joining the Heavenly Demon Assembly. He was only a messenger, and if Xiang Beifei refused, there was no point in insisting. After all, he had initially clashed with Zhao Yingguang and got no benefit from it. His strength was only on par with Zhao Yingguang's. Since Xiang Beifei had killed Zhao Yingguang, he could surely kill him as well. Sapu was responsible for doing his job, which was advocacy. Success or failure was out of his control. Meanwhile, the demon tentacle man with a stern face coldly snorted. Really ungrateful. Do you actually think that just because you defeated Zhao Yingguang, you're invincible in the world? Do you have any face yourself? Xiang Beifei retorted. Impudent! How dare you speak to me that way? The demon tentacle man barked angrily. Calmly, Xiang Beifei said, What need is there for words with a parasite? You're seeking death. The demon tentacle man growled, and his aura skyrocketed. Boom! The surrounding aura surged violently, startling all the cultivators. Ji! Stop! The woman with a cracked mouth narrowed her eyes and spoke out. Compared to the volatile demon tentacle man, the cracked mouth woman was obviously more prudent. She restrained the man, preventing his outburst. After a moment, she announced clearly, We're all trapped in this place, and since we have formed powers, random attacks are unreasonable, as we all have our own supporters. As supporters, we should safeguard against chaos. So we've established a rule. Should there be any unresolved grievances that must lead to battle, one can simply apply for a duel to the death. But private attacks are not allowed. Ji, as a high elder of the Dawn Alliance, you should adhere to this most of all. The demon tentacle man suppressed his scorn and snorted coldly. Xiang Beifei asked, When were these rules decided? Just now, as a result of a joint discussion between the leaders of our 3 organizations, she replied. The cracked mouth woman lifted her gaze to sweep around the other E-Trib cultivators who were watching the commotion, saying, I hope all friends will remember, by joining their respective alliance powers, one is protected by those powers. If there are unsolvable grievances, one can propose to resolve them on the life or death stage. If anyone violates this rule, initiating a private attack, the one who acts first will be attacked by the collective. This is also to ensure that this region doesn't fall into too much chaos. The reason everyone joined other powers was to ensure that their race had a protector. As a result, the 3 sides naturally did not permit private conflicts, as it would be awkward for the leaders to not deal with such trifle issues. Hence, this rule was born. After the cracked mouth woman had spoken, she looked at Xiang Beifei with a smile. I hope Daoist Xiong will also remember this. The demon tentacle man beside her asked darkly, Xiang Beifei, you just had the audacity to disrespect me, violating my dignity. I now issue you a life or death challenge. Do you accept? Xiang Beifei asked pointedly. So if I kill you on the life or death stage, the Dawn Alliance won't trouble me any further? Heh, as if you could? The demon tentacle man laughed coldly. Answer my question directly, Xiang Beifei said. The cracked mouth woman spoke up. Of course. Rules are rules as long as you accept the challenge. Then the losing side on the life or death stage, even if killed, their supporting power cannot seek revenge. That's the consensus reached by the leaders of our 3 groups. Fine then. Xiang Beifei sized up the man with the split hairstyle who was invoking the heavenly Dao laws. This was a mid-heavenly connection realm expert, far stronger than Zhao Yingguang. But in front of Xiang Beifei, there was no difference. He was merely a mid-heavenly connection realm spiritual power crystal. Speaking of which, he was in dire need of heavenly connection realm spiritual power crystals. Xiang Beifei rejected the invitations from the 3 factions and even set a life and death battle with the man from the demon tentacle race with the split hairstyle. This news quickly spread to the ears of all cultivators in the land of inheritance, and for a while everyone was discussing it. Am I hearing things? Xiang Beifei is actually going to fight with Zhen from the Dawn Alliance. That Zhen is not someone Zhao Yingguang can compare with. No matter how powerful Zhao Yingguang is, He's only at the early heavenly connection stage, but Jun is a genuine mid-heavenly connection realm master who entered and exited the giant spirit village 5 times still unharmed. How could Xiang Beifei from Kangji Abyss dare to accept his challenge? It's said to be because Xiang Beifei spoke with a harsh tone, offending Jun and infuriating him. Everyone from the demon tentacle race is not easy to provoke, you know? The E-tribe cultivators were all discussing this matter. These days, they came to understand the strength of the man with the split hairstyle. When they passed through the giant spirit village, it was a near-death experience for them. Yet the split-haired man crossed the giant spirit village many times alone just to scout if the exit was unsealed. The giant spirits, which shocked all E-tribe cultivators, could not do anything to the man with the split hairstyle, making them deeply revere his strength. Many races chose to join the Dawn Alliance precisely because of the split-haired man, thinking they could follow him out once the seal was broken. Therefore, many cultivators were even more optimistic about the split-haired man's chances. On the other hand, Fu Qiuzi was very troubled. He had originally come to discuss this matter with Xiang Beifei, intending to join a certain faction with him, so they wouldn't end up on opposing sides in the future. But he never expected Xiang Beifei to refuse all 3 factions. Daoist Xiang, by rejecting all 3 factions, you have really put me in a tough spot, Fu Qiuzi said with a wry smile. Xiang Beifei said, don't worry. Considering your own people, if you want to join any faction, just make your own choice. If conflicts arise in the future, I'll refrain from harming your people. Fu Qiuzi was a rather principled man from the E-tribe. Although saving him was an unintentional act, he always remembered that favor and didn't want to trip Xiang Beifei up in secret. So Xiang Beifei wasn't going to make things difficult for him. But Fu Qiuzi helplessly said, Daoist Xiang, have you considered that I don't have many options now? They are all interested in you right now, and these past few days I've been close to you. If I join any race, I'm afraid I will be used as a gun to target you. That is true. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly. Fu Qiuzi was indeed forward-thinking, considering all aspects thoroughly. In the end, Fu Qiuzi might have no choice but to stand against Xiang Beifei. Li Qianluo interjected. Then you might as well join our camp. We've already established our own faction. Huh? When did we establish our own faction? Xiang Beifei asked, puzzled. There's no time like the present right now, Li Qianluo said with a hint of a sly smile, rubbing her hands together. I've always wanted to create a faction for fun. She seemed eager, as if she relished the idea of stirring up chaos. For fun? Daoistly, do you realize who we're up against? Fu Qiuzi said, sweating inwardly. I know, a bunch of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, Li Qianluo said disdainfully. Fu Qiuzi. He couldn't gauge Li Qianluo's depth, but he knew this girl was far from simple. Then have you thought about what our faction's name should be? Xiang Beifei asked. Let's call it Zhajiang Stronghold. Zhajiang Stronghold? Xiang Beifei was taken aback. Li Qianluo chuckled. We met through that fried sauce rat you mentioned, so naming it Zhajiang Stronghold is more than appropriate. Xiang Beifei felt somewhat at a loss for words. He thought he was casual enough with names, but apparently, there was someone even less reliable. Xiang Beifei, you'll be the leader, Fu Qiuzi. If you're willing, you can be our strategist, Li Qianluo said. If I'm the leader, then what are you? The leader's wife, Xiang Beifei asked. The leader's wife? That title sounds kind of strange. Li Qianluo mused while touching her chin, then waved her hand dismissively and said, Never mind. I've been so bored this month that setting up a stronghold for some fun isn't a bad idea. Anyway, go and finish off that split-haired man later. I've been finding him irritating for a long time. Didn't you notice that they deliberately said those things? They clearly came to force your hand, as if they want to get rid of you first. Anyway, seal the deal after you take care of him, and establish the stronghold with blood oaths. Li Qianluo saw through the intentions of the demon tentacle race very clearly. Do you have that much faith that I can take him down? Xiang Beifei asked. Of course. Otherwise, why would I suggest you be the leader of Zhajiang Stronghold? Li Qianluo retorted with a curl of the lip. Xiang Beifei shrugged indifferently. The name Jia Jiang's stronghold didn't matter to him much. But indeed, he had no intention of letting the split-haired man off easy.